For those who are unfamiliar, this is Dave Rubin. He used to work for TYT. He was on the left at one point, allegedly. And eventually, as time went on, he moved further and further right until he basically became like a far-right nutcase. He's like a Trump supporter now and everything. It's crazy. His political, evolution, I guess you might call it, was absolutely bizarre to watch. I remember I watched it happen. Now he is diving headfirst into conspiracy theories. He just released a video titled Klaus Schwab's latest speech proves conspiracy theorists right again. Now, that's completely false. There's a conspiracy theory called the Great Reset. It's kind of a complex little conspiracy theory. I'll explain what it is before we actually get into this. But I wanted to watch this video from Dave Rubin, see what he had to say about it. This is actually live right now as I'm talking, so we're going to be watching it live with like a 20-minute delay or something. Anyway, all right, let's watch this, see what Rubin has to say for himself. Before we do, though, let me just give you a short 5-minute explanation of what the Great Reset is, if you don't know, and then we'll jump into this. Let's just read through. This is a BBC article on what the Great Reset is. This is the title, What is the Great Reset and How Did It Get Hijacked by Conspiracy Theories? A vague set of proposals from an influential organization has been transformed by online conspiracy theorists into a powerful viral rallying cry. What is the truth behind the Great Reset? Believers spin dark tales about an authoritarian socialist world government run by powerful capitalists and politicians, a secret cabal that is broadcasting its plan around the world. Despite all the contradictions in the last sentence, thousands online have latched on to this latest reimagining of an old conspiracy theory, updated for the age of COVID. Yeah, the Great Reset conspiracy really came straight out of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This old book I've mentioned before multiple times, written by anti-Semitic people that basically described the Jews' plan for world domination. It was completely made up then, and it's made up now. Anyway, let's keep reading this. Where did it begin? Like many popular conspiracy theories, this one starts with a grain of fact. In June 2020, so 5 months after COVID really came to the shores of the U.S. and the world started taking it seriously, June 2020, the Prince of Wales and the head of the annual Davos Summit launched an initiative calling for the pandemic to be seen as a chance for what they called a great reset of the global economy. A flashy launch video interspersed images of a world in chaos, a dead killer whale, a hurricane, a kangaroo caught in a fire, with a speech by Prince Charles. We have an incredible opportunity to create an entirely new sustainable industries, the prince said. The time to act is now. Now, as I'm sure you've surmised at this point, the Great Reset is a massive conspiracy theory that encompasses nearly everything, but doesn't really have any details. It's weird how it all formed out, but think about this. Who serves to gain from the conspiracy theory that we have to prevent economies from serving the workers? The original plan that was being outlined at the Davos Summit, when it says calling for the pandemic to be seen as a chance to reset the global economy, they were saying reset it to be more amicable and fair and more equitable to workers. Serve workers' rights. Who serves to gain from spreading this conspiracy theory, really? You can't convince me that billionaires around the world were not involved in turning this into a conspiracy theory. You can't convince me. The other founder of the initiative is Professor Klaus Schwab, head of the World Economic Forum, which organizes an annual summit in a Swiss ski resort for some of the world's wealthiest and most powerful people. He explained the idea behind the Great Reset in an article accompanying the launch. The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world to create a healthier, more equitable, and more prosperous future. Who do you think had an investment in making this fall apart and turn into a conspiracy theory? Who do we know that is opposed to making things more fair and equitable and healthier? And suddenly, out of nowhere, it just explodes, and every conspiracy theorist in the world buys into this Great Reset thing. There's a Great Reset podcast and even a 280-page book, but the plan is light on specific detail. Professor Schwab does speak about a wealth tax and ending fossil fuel subsidies. Interesting. Who would be opposed to those things, I wonder? But the scope is huge, covering technology, climate change, the future of work, international security, and other themes, and it's difficult to see precisely what the Great Reset might mean in practice. This lack of clarity, combined with the plan being launched by an influential organization, provided fertile ground for conspiracy theories to grow. This is Klaus Schwab right here. A conspiracy theory is born. The proposals, along with the WEF itself, face legitimate criticism from a variety of sources. Conservative political figures and media outlets accuse the organization of pushing for environmental policies that would hurt the economy. Weird, huh? So it sounds like the Great Reset was intended to improve environmental policies, to make the world more equitable and fair for the worker. What were some of the other things they listed here? Create a wealth tax, work on technology, work on climate change, work on privacy rights, a whole bunch of other stuff. Such a weird... Who created this conspiracy, I wonder? What group of people would be opposed to these things? This is so weird. We'll never know. We'll never know who was opposed to this. What group of people could have started this conspiracy theory? It's just a mystery. There are questions about whether unelected individuals like Mr. Schwab should have the power to lobby so prominently for ideas that could potentially transform the global economy. Okay, well, he's unelected, but he's free to voice his interests and concerns. Everybody is. That's the nature of democracy. The Davos meeting is certainly filled with powerful people who have a huge influence on world events. There are also concerns about the impact of technology on civil liberties and jobs. But the real energy online is not about legitimate political questions, discussions about fossil fuels and income inequality, but in the shape of wild and unsubstantiated claims. The term Great Reset has received more than 8 million interactions on Facebook and been shared almost 2 million times on Twitter since the initiative was launched, according to BBC Monitoring Research. Number of Great Reset posts on Facebook, posts using keywords between June 2020 and May 2021. Among the most popular posts are baseless statements that the Great Reset is a strategic part of a grand conspiracy by the global elite who somehow planned and managed the COVID-19 pandemic. In this narrative, lockdown restrictions were introduced not to curb the spread of the virus, but to deliberately bring about economic collapse and a socialist world government, albeit run for the benefit of powerful capitalists. So there's mention of the Great Reset when the plan comes out, June 2020. And then Justin Trudeau released a viral video about, the Great Reset, and it just exploded in the number of posts online about it. The number of posts on Facebook. Interesting, right? And then conspiracy theorists started coming up with all kinds of crazy ideas. In this narrative about the COVID-19 pandemic, lockdown restrictions were introduced not to curb the spread of the virus, but to deliberately bring about economic collapse and a socialist world government, albeit run for the benefit of powerful capitalists. The nebulousness of this conspiracy theory means it's found followers among anti-vax activists, anti-lockdown campaigners, New Age healers, and those on the far right and the far left. J.P. Sears he used to be kind of funny, but now he's a complete nutcase. And he's got like millions of subbies, I think. It's the guy in the middle of this picture right here. You'll own nothing and be happy, the Great Reset. Now look, Franklin Graham, televangelist, even got in on the action. How did it go viral? These conspiracy theories began circulating online around June 2020, but only gained significant traction later in the year. On November 15th, the phrase started trending on Twitter when a video went viral showing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at a UN meeting in September, saying the pandemic provided an opportunity for a reset. It's unclear whether he's referring to the WEF plan. But some claimed his speech was proof that global leaders were using the pandemic as a pretext to introduce a range of socialist and environmental policies. Thousands of Trump supporters boosted this idea. They claimed that a victory for Mr. Trump in November's election was the only chance to thwart the so-called secret plot. They called it Agenda 2022, I think. Agenda 2022 or Agenda 2020, something like that. And the idea was they wanted to have, or maybe it was Agenda 2023, I don't remember now. The idea was that they wanted to have the Great Reset fully implemented and a one world government implemented by 2023. But no, it was 2020. And Trump getting elected in 2016 thwarted that plan and pushed it off, and now it's Agenda 2030. It just completely made up, all of it. It's all entirely fabricated out of the ether. So that is the Great Reset. I hear you asking, but what is it? And the answer is nobody knows. I still don't know what it is. Nonsense, that's what. It incorporates every conspiracy theory known to man. Lizard people and socialism and one world government, all of it. It's insane. So, yeah, it was picked up by QAnon and basically everybody out. Every conspiracy theory of every variety. QAnoners, anti-vaxxers, anti-lockdown campaigners, New Age healers, people on the far right, people on the far left. Like, it's just widespread is the point. Here are some other points that have kind of been worked into the conspiracy. The pandemic was created by the elites. Microchips will be injected into people that alter people's DNA and act as like your credit card, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, yeah, it borrows ideas from like a ton of conspiracy theories from the 18th and 19th centuries. It's just nuts, dude. It's just nuts, all of it. Thanks, past me. So anyway, now you should have some idea. Klaus Schwab is like the leader of it, and there are all kinds of crazy conspiracy theories about him. So, all right, let's listen to this, see what he says. I had to jump in mid-sentence, unfortunately, because everything he says is one long run-on sentence. So we're jumping in mid-sentence. You haven't missed anything important, trust me.
Has slowed down just a little bit, right? We rolled into the new year. Republicans took over Congress. We had a couple hearings. This last week or so feels like it's cooled off in terms of just like nitty-gritty political.
Seriously, since the moment I started playing, this entire thing was a sentence.
Republicans are doing this, Democrats are doing that. We got through the State of the Union. Now it's just like a whole bunch of weird stuff I mentioned yesterday. This massive.
Literally, still, this is one long run-on sentence to this moment. He's still saying a single sentence.
Massive explosion and chemical spill in East Palestine, Ohio, that the media has completely ignored. Not only the media, but our government has completely ignored. And then finally, it happened, I believe, 12 days ago. We're going to show you a whole bunch of pictures and videos.
There was a pause there, but that pause was mid-sentence. It was at a comma, not a period. There have been no periods to be found anywhere in anything that this dude has said so far.
Finally, after the last 2 or 3 days of people online sharing videos, and it's one of the reasons that they don't want you to be able to share videos online so that they can control the narrative, eventually, because enough people shared videos, kids were out there, literally kids, 15-year-olds that live in the area were out there on the streets showing videos of dead fish and dead birds and chemical burns and all.
Yeah, so what he's talking about right now, if you're watching this 5 years in the future, there was a train derailment in Palestine, Ohio, and apparently it's actually pronounced Palestine, not Palestine. The one in the Middle East is pronounced Palestine, but that's different. So anyway, there was a huge chemical spill. It was, I think, vinyl chloride. It's one of the chemicals that's used to produce PVC, which is the type of plastic that plumbers use in pipes and stuff commonly. But apparently it's incredibly dangerous. It causes cancer and birth defects and all kinds of problems. It's basically like a nuclear disaster, right, if that gets out. Optionally, the better option is to burn it. So if you burn it off rather than let it release like into the atmosphere, then instead of causing cancer and birth defects, it just creates hydrochloric acid when it comes in contact with water vapor. So basically it was between releasing a chemical that causes cancer and birth defects or releasing hydrochloric acid into the air. Another problem is that it releases phosgene gas, which is it was used in World War I as a chemical weapon against people. So, yeah, that's not fantastic. I cannot believe I survived that just now. People are dying. Birds are falling out of the sky. It's deeply ugly, and nobody was talking about it. Nobody. It was absolutely disgusting, dude. Absolutely disgusting, the way that it all played out with the train derailment. But, okay. I'm going to bet that Dave Rubin is going to find a way to blame it on Democrats, right?
All of this stuff. Then the mainstream media finally comes around to it, and Gay Pete, our transportation secretary, who only got the job because he's a homosexual.
Dude, this is so sad. Dave Rubin is gay. And the guy is effectively attacking the LGBT community. It had nothing to do with the fact that he's gay. What evidence does he have to believe that Pete Buttigieg was hired or, put into his position as transportation secretary because he's gay? There's no evidence of that. None. He was a real presidential contender. He came close. I mean, he won some primaries, I think, some states against Biden and Bernie and all of the other people that were running back in the 2020, Democratic primary. It's not because he's gay. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's gay. What is wrong with Dave Rubin, really?
He had no qualifications other than doing homo things.
That's complete nonsense. He's been in politics for ever. He was like the mayor of a town for a while, wasn't he? In Indianapolis or something? I forget exactly where he was the mayor, but he has a ton of political experience. He has a ton of campaigning experience and all this stuff. What is he talking about?
He finally, 12 days later, commented on it with 2 tweets. We'll get to that. And the real question...
Why did he expect Pete Buttigieg to comment on this in the first place?
And I suppose for the show today is who is responsible for all the weird stuff that's happening right now, and who is going to do something about it, and what is their motive? And are any of those things connected? That's what we will try to decipher today on the Rubin Report. Before we get to it, let me talk to you guys about Birch Gold. Despite the...
Oh, my God, dude. He's trying to sell us this gold scam here. Okay. Let's just skip past it because this is complete garbage.
In times of rating words.
Wow, that was a long sponsorship.
But clearly one thing that has been unearthed over these last...
Dude, this is still a single sentence. This guy has said a single sentence since he was live streaming. That is crazy.
Couple years of COVID craziness and climate craziness and big tech craziness is that there are a series of groups led by some pretty, I would say, terrible people who really want to control your life. They want to decide when you can go outside and what foods you can eat and what stove you can cook on and what temperature you can keep your house.
It's complete nonsense. If you're watching this 5 years in the future and you're not familiar with the latest culture war nonsense that they're spreading, there was this culture war thing happening not too long ago where the right claimed that the left is trying to take your gas stove from you. Just completely made up, all of it. It's all fear-mongering nonsense. I think, who was it? The FDA maybe, or the EPA? I don't know. Some government organization discovered that there's a lot of methane and other types of gases released by gas stoves when they're burning. So, as it turns out, it is one of the main causes of childhood asthma. It's like living with a smoker, having a gas stove. It's really, really bad for you, apparently. I had no idea. And, no one else really knew either, honestly. This is all, brand new information to a lot of people. So it was a big deal when it came out, right? Oh, my God, we should be getting rid of our gas stoves in favor of induction stoves, for example. Tons of good options. And the right picked this up and ran with it and just lost their minds, claimed the left is trying to take our stoves and all this other garbage. It's completely made up, all of it. It's like a culture war issue now. They absolutely insist that they're being persecuted by the left because the left is trying to take their stuff. No, we're just trying to prevent childhood asthma. Like, oh my God, people. So anyway, it sounds like Dave bought right into that ridiculous culture war BS.
And much more. Of course, the leader, the pin-up model for this is the World Economic Forum's Klaus Schwab. He is...
Pin-up model? Does anybody even know that reference anymore? There used to be pin-up models like in the 50s before porn was easily available to everybody and their brother. But do people use pin-up models anymore? Is this because Dave has a calendar with Hot Guy of the Month pinned up on his wall or something? Is this why pin-up model is on his mind? I don't know.
Sheev Palpatine in reality. Well, we know we had the World Economic Forum summit just a couple weeks ago. Now they have another one. It's happening right now. It's called the World Government Summit. These people, it's all like right out of, isn't the World Government Summit? Isn't that what the Super Friends were fighting? Oh, that was the Legion of Doom. All right, close enough, guys. You got it.
It's not close at all. They're completely unrelated. They just desperately need this to be a conspiracy, even when it's not.
It. That's where all the bad guys hung out, you remember? Anyway, here is Klaus Schwab at the World Government Summit, and somehow he seems to know that we're going to have a Black Swan event. A Black Swan event, by the way, is something really, really bad happens all over the world. Take a look.
And the last factor I want to mention is resilience, the capability to bounce back, because there will be...
That's Klaus Schwab, by the by. If you've never seen him before, that's him. He runs the World Economic Forum, I believe.
Certainly what we call the black swans, the unpleasant surprises which will come in our way.
Certainly be endless surprises.
Okay, I didn't see anything wrong with what he said. Was there something wrong with what he said?
Well, if they're endless surprises, then I don't think they're certainly there. The Black Swan events, they're going to come, sort of like COVID, that kind of fit the narrative that a one world government guy would like.
Again, there is no goal to create a one world government. It's certainly not orchestrated by like Klaus Schwab of all people. This is completely made up. It's just conspiracy theory nonsense, and I honestly can't believe that Dave Rubin, somebody who was ostensibly, at least pretended to be, on the left, would promote such a thing.
The forces of Western freedom and the defenders of liberal democracies, liberal in the right sense of the word liberal, and the governments that defend individual freedoms, notably the United States of America at the top of that list, get them to crush their own laws, get them to eliminate dissent and silence their own citizens. That's what this guy wants to do at something called the World Government Forum. There's no such thing as the world government. They would like to create one.
Oh my God, he's conflating terms, okay? What this means is this is a representation of the governments of the world, not a representation of the world government. I mean, he's just playing right into conspiracy theories right now. Look, I've heard this guy talk before. Okay, he's not dumb. I think he pretends to be dumb. Like, he used to say things like, I address ideas, not people. That is a fantastically good idea. Absolutely, you should address ideas, not people, by and large. It's virtuous to address ideas rather than people. Addressing people rather than ideas leads to stochastic terrorism events and extremism. What's happening right now? Like, Dave Rubin has dropped all of the virtues and ideals that he believed in before. It's absolutely bizarre to see this guy take positions that make absolutely no sense, say things that are nonsensical and contrary to everything that he once believed in. It's just strange to see his political evolution this way, or devolution, if you will.
But no, You as a citizen, if you're watching this from the United States, you only have to abide by the laws of the United States of America, your state, your country. And when those laws are unjust, then you have to figure out how to change those laws within the laws, because we have a pretty good system of laws to go out there and amend things and change things and all that. But they're not happy about that because they want one government. So whether you live in the United States or you live in Sweden or you live in Chad or you live in Switzerland or give me another fun country, my friend, Austria.
Just completely made up. There's nobody, taking part in a concerted effort to create a world government where all laws are the same across everywhere. That's just fabricated BS. It's fear-mongering nonsense that public figures like Dave Rubin have engaged in an effort to scare the shit out of old people or to scare the shit out of conspiracy theorists. Like, he's been doing this, not just him, but many others have been doing this, trying to scare conspiracy theorists forever. It's embarrassing.
I didn't know where you were. I thought you were going to go somewhere in Asia. But the point is, they want to control you.
No, he hasn't proven that. He's just spouting it off.
Who's another person that wants to control you, and how does she want to do it? It's Greta Thunberg.
No. Again, what evidence does he have to suggest that anybody wants to control anybody? And also, I think it's pronounced Thunberg. I looked this up. I believe her name is Greta Thunberg. Why does he think Greta wants to control anybody?
Greta Thunberg, who no doubt flies all over the place in private jets. You remember the...
Oh, I have no doubt. Notice what he said there just now? I have no doubt. No proof either, but no doubt. Okay.
Video a couple weeks ago we played of her being arrested by German authorities, but the whole thing was staged. First, she took a bunch of pictures with them, all smiling. They make sure the handcuffs are on nice and loose, and then they carry her away, and everyone...
Okay, again, this is all speculation. I have no idea what he's talking about.
He's giggling. She's got a new book out, people. Here's a tweet from Greta Thunberg. I'm so pleased to share that the climate book is now available in the U.S. and Canada. I have gathered wisdom of over 100 contributors to...
He's an ideas guy, right? Not a people guy, but an ideas guy. You know, there was a time when he was doing his political evolution, I guess you could say, where he moved from left wing to right wing, where he said he finally kind of came out as not on the left anymore. I don't think he ever said that he was like on the right yet, but he said he was not on the left. And he said, my brain is still in recovery mode from all the high level ideas. It was just straight up embarrassing, man. Just embarrassing.
Highlight the many different crises we face and equip us with the knowledge we need to avoid the climate disaster. This is, was there a little more there? That was it. It was just one tweet. I think she had 2 tweets originally. That's all right. Anyway, she's putting out a book to freak people out. Just like John Kerry, who became super rich on the climate grift. Al Gore.
Wow. Climate change is a grift, apparently. Okay. Interesting.
Or who's worth a couple $100 million after being VP on the climate grift. This is what they do, and they want to control you. Climate change is the next one. And would it surprise you if the very people who purport to be all about the environment and green technologies, and they love the earth, but you evil Republicans hate it because somehow you care about capitalism or something like that?
Okay, no, I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism, and the left does not generally call me evil for being a capitalist. Most of the left, anyways, does not call me evil for being a capitalist. I mean, there are some nutter butters out there who say, oh, you're a sick fuck because you're a capitalist. Now, I believe in heavily regulated capitalism. That is not representative of the left being anti-capitalist entirely. He's just making this up.
Like that. Would it surprise you if they were actually the ones doing the most damage to the environment? And not only doing the most damage to the environment, but doing the most damage to the people who live on this earth. Speaking of that, the EU Parliament has just voted to ban petrol car sales by 2035.
That's fantastic news. Why would we ever need... Why did he call it petrol car sales? Why would we ever need a gas-powered car when electric cars are more efficient, they're faster, they're more powerful, they're stronger, they're everything. Everything about them is better, basically. Why would anybody want that? Why would anybody want to use a gas-powered car? Dude, I kind of screwed the pooch on this one, didn't I? I was supposed to keep this puppy right here. Okay, there we go. Am I missing something? Oh, I was missing something. Okay. Electric vehicles are way better in pretty much every way.
How they're going to replace them, no idea, but here's some applauding after this.
How are they going to replace them? Okay, they weren't banning the cars, you... All right, I'm not going to be that guy that's always bagging on people. They're not going to replace them. They're going to prohibit future sales, is what they're going to do. They're going to prohibit future sales. If you have a gas-powered vehicle, you are perfectly free to continue using it. It's just the idea is over time, people will be more likely to have electric vehicles until gas-powered ones are completely phased out eventually. That's the idea. And honestly, gas stations aren't going away either way. They're going to have charging stations, and I don't know that they can even feasibly make electric trucks yet, can they? Like long-haul trucks, big box trucks where they transport 18-wheelers, you know? I don't think that they can do electric trucks like that yet. So there will still have to be like diesel stations, for example. If you want to buy a diesel car, you will always have a vehicle to fill up with diesel. You'll always have diesel there to use, at least.
The vote.
Vote is closed. And it is adopted, and thereby the first reading of Parliament is closed. Thank you.
Yeah, this is actually fantastic news if it's true. Don't believe a word you hear on this website. Nothing. A lot of things that Dave Rubin says are just completely made up. A ton of stuff is just fabricated right out of the ether.
Very exciting, guys. No more petrol cars in the EU.
Like, did they even say in that video that that's what that resolution was? I didn't hear that.
Vote is closed. And it is adopted, and thereby the first reading of Parliament is closed.
Is this even real? Is this actually the vote on the banning of, like, gas-powered cars? Is that the same vote? I don't know. Again, don't trust a word out of Dave Rubin's mouth. The dude lies for a living. That's his whole bit.
Thank you.
Very exciting, guys. No more petrol cars in the EU by 2035.
That's incorrect. No more new gas-powered cars sold in the EU after 2035. Does not mean that they're banning those by 2035. See, this is a little thing, but this is how it's twisted around. This is how they stretch it.
We don't know how we're going to, keep people on the roads or if any of this makes sense, but we just do things that sort of sound right. We'll deal.
Completely made up. Complete nonsense. I mean, it's obvious, right? That this dude is a full-blown grifter.
Deal with the consequences later.
What consequences? What are the consequences of switching to all-electric vehicles?
Speaking of consequences, let's get to this East Palestine story. This is wild. So East Palestine is a little town in Ohio. You have probably never heard of it before this. It is a little town, as we're going to show some clips of Tucker Carlson explaining what's going on there in a moment. But as he notes, a lot of white people, so this doesn't really fit the narrative, because white people can't be victims.
I'm sorry, what? What is he talking about? White people can't be victims. What's he saying?
According to the government.
No, I don't understand. How did this guy go from being on the left to being where he is now? This just blows me away, honestly. It's like, when I stopped believing in Jehovah's Witnesses, that's a one-way street, baby. There is no going back from that. It's not like I'm going to wake up one day and be like, oh, you know what? I think Jehovah's Witnesses were right all along. No, that's not how it works. It's a one-way street. I never thought that I would ever see somebody go from believing that, Black Lives Matter too, just as much as everybody else. I never thought I'd see somebody go from that position to where Dave Rubin is right now. It blows me away, dude.
On February 3rd, 12 days ago, there was an unbelievable, I don't even know what the right adjective to use to describe it is, just an absolutely astoundingly horrific disaster, a train accident that then released unbelievable amount of chemicals.
Absolutely. How much you want to bet he's going to blame this on Democrats somehow? I bet anything he is. In reality, it wasn't Democrats' fault. It wasn't Republicans' fault. It's the fault of deregulators, at the very least. I can say deregulators wanted to make it a lot easier to cut through regulations, a lot cheaper to run a train company, so that these train companies can pad their wallets and do stock buybacks and all this other stuff. Whichever political party contributed to deregulation, I would probably blame them. But let's see what Dave Rubin says.
Into the air, fire, explosions, the whole thing. Here's a little video about it that was making the rounds online.
Massive train derailed Friday, 20 of them carrying hazardous materials as flames lit up the sky in northeastern Ohio.
The evacuation order is in place for anyone within a mile radius of the crash site.
These aren't storm clouds. This is the they burn off in East Palestine. This is not storm clouds.
That's true. It was borderline like a nuclear disaster, basically. It was as bad as a nuclear disaster could be. Really, really ugly stuff, seriously.
Look at it!
I got arrested because I was trying to do a live report.
Yep, they arrested a news reporter, too, for reporting on it. Absolutely. It is deeply disturbing stuff. What's this say? According to Norfolk Southern Railroad, the controlled release process involves burning of rail cars chemicals. Yeah, I mentioned this earlier. They had to burn it off. If they didn't burn off the chemicals, it was going to cause cancer and birth defects to everybody in the vicinity. So, unfortunately, it was necessary. I don't think anybody likes that, but it is what it is, right? I mean, that's just what happens with train derailments in a disaster of this level. There are no good options to be had here, unfortunately. Areas facing grave danger of death. Anyone who remains in the yellow impacted areas at high risk of severe injury, including skin burns, serious lung damage. That's because they burned it off. Yeah. When they burned it off, as I mentioned earlier, it turned into hydrochloric acid when it touched water vapor, basically. When it came into contact with water vapor, it turned into hydrochloric acid. So if you're in the area, basically, you're breathing in hydrochloric acid. You're breathing in the stuff they use to make meth or clean patios. I mean, scientists use hydrochloric acid to burn things all the time. It's bad. It's really, really bad. Absolutely.
Officials are claiming that the air and water are safe. Residents say they can still smell chlorine. They've complained about their eyes watering when they go outside, and one woman says the noxious air killed her chickens.
Out of nowhere, he just started coughing really hard and just shut down. And
I usually don't like compilations like this. They're not trustworthy by and large, especially when you're watching them on like a right-wing Rumble channel or whatever you would call it. But this is so far pretty accurate. All this stuff seems to be happening, and I don't know that, like, I guess you could say the government was kind of covering it up. They told everybody it was safe to return home when it absolutely was not. It's not good, man. It's not good at all. Deeply disturbing stuff.
Went very fast.
Look at all these fucking crows. I'm not kidding. This is within 10 miles of East Palestine.
Rail companies blocked safety rules before Ohio derailment. Yeah, that's true. They lobbied the government to remove regulations and stuff. It's not good. It's not good at all. Got no argument on that from me.
If you have not evacuated, please leave the area.
They said, I believe, if you don't evacuate, then you face arrest, basically. You're going to be arrested if you don't evacuate. Deeply disturbing.
Okay, so the images and the video, we could go on and on with all that. I want to get into a little bit of the specifics. Now, first off, I just want to talk about the timeline on this thing. This happened 12 days ago. I don't think I even heard about it until about 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It was super quiet. Surprisingly quiet. Like, I didn't hear about it, and I keep up with politics like nobody, practically.
And I could be what's called a very online person. So this was not making the rounds. Eventually, it started gaining traction online. Thus, I'm talking about it today. But we did a quick scan of virtually every CNN anchor that we could find on Twitter, an MSNBC anchor, and New York Times journalist. Nobody is talking about this, and certainly nobody.
Yeah, he's correct. And it's not just the ones that he listed there. CNN, MSNBC, whoever else. I don't even know who he lists. NBC, maybe, CBS. It's not just them. You know who else isn't talking about it? Fox News, Newsmax, One America News, you know? Those people, the people that you love so much, your most favoritist of news anchors.
But he was talking about it for 10 days. Putting aside everything else, if you see a massive explosion of that nature, is that not newsworthy relative to, I don't know, what's going on in America? Like just on the NBC nightly news. And today there was a train derailment and a crazy massive explosion. We don't know about all the chemicals yet, but this is worth showing. Just visually, all the flames, it's something. But they all went absolutely dark on this.
Well, they didn't go absolutely dark. There were news articles written about it on their website, like NBC News. AP News had been writing about it since day one. BBC, America, let's see. There were a bunch of others that were reporting on it. You just don't keep up with those. Now, to his credit, I don't really keep up with those either. Not very closely. I should probably directly read their websites a lot more often than I do. But, yeah.
And as I often say, one of the things that you now know about the news is when they're not talking about something, that probably is the thing to be talking about, right?
No, that's simply false. You know, the news... The fact that the news didn't talk about the COVID lab leak conspiracy theory doesn't give it any validity. Doesn't give it any validity. Just because the news didn't talk about vaccines giving you AIDS or something doesn't mean that vaccines give you AIDS. That is a logical fallacy if I've ever heard one before.
Like that really is it. Anyway, Tucker Carlson, of course, Tucker is one of the few people that is doing anything roughly approximate to honesty in.
Just the fact that he says such a ridiculous thing is absolutely disgusting. Tucker Carlson is the right's most popular propagandist right now. And some of the things that he says are as disturbing as it gets.
In corporate media, here he is summarizing the conditions of East Palestine.
East Palestine is overwhelmingly white and it's politically conservative, more than.
And that's why the news isn't covering it. Is that what he's going to say? The news won't cover it because they're white, and that's evidence that white people are persecuted.
70% of the voters in the surrounding county supported Donald Trump in the last election. That shouldn't be relevant, but as you're about to hear, it very much is.
Well, hey, then that means Fox News, Tucker Carlson himself, One America News, Newsmax, all these people should have been covering it from day one, right? If this is evidence of a cover-up because they were Trump supporters, then Tucker Carlson, with his vast resources, should have, hypothetically, been covering this story since the day that it happened. Would you be surprised to find that he hasn't been covering it since day one? Tucker Carlson is notorious for twisting things around constantly. Like, this is his whole bit, right? When Paul Whelan, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Paul Whelan is that guy that was captured in Russia, and they claimed that he was, like, engaging in espionage or something like that. Paul Whelan was not brought home through a deal with the Biden administration and Russia, right? And Tucker lost his mind after a deal wasn't reached to bring Whelan home and said, the White House has forgotten about Whelan, but we won't. You notice you haven't heard a word from the White House about Paul Whelan and all this. He didn't care about Paul Whelan until 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after Whelan didn't get out of prison. 15 minutes before, 15 minutes after the deal fell apart to get Whelan out of prison, out of Russian prison. And he hasn't spoken about him ever since. Tucker never cared about Paul Whelan. Never has, never will. What he cares about is propagandizing. And it just blows me away that Dave Rubin, of all people, believes that Tucker Carlson is an honest actor. He's one of the most honest news reporters or whatever. Is that what he said? He's not even a news reporter. It just blows my mind that Dave Rubin is the way he is. Like, how did he get here? Seriously.
11 days ago, a 150-car train derailed in East Palestine, and when it did, it spewed poisonous chemicals onto the ground and into the surface waters. After the crash, the Ohio State EPA found evidence of butyl acrylate in the Ohio River, as well as in the creeks and streams that feed it. Now, this was a concern for more than simply East Palestine, given that the Ohio River supplies drinking water to about 1/10 of the entire U.S. population. So this train derailment was an environmental disaster. Not an environmental disaster like climate change is, but an
climate change is an environmental disaster. What's he talking about right now?
Actual environmental disaster.
Okay, so this is serious stuff. 10% of drinking water to Americans, right? You can look at all the videos of the dead.
Yeah, that's not super accurate to my knowledge. That's taking things and running with them. It's totally undeserved. The Ohio River doesn't represent 10% of the drinking water in the United States. I've never heard that before. Even in the Huntington, West Virginia area, which I believe borders the Ohio River, all of those areas don't get their water from the Ohio River. A lot of it is rainwater that's like filtered and cleaned and stuff. So, yeah, just not really representative of the situation, but it is really bad. It's a really bad situation that they're in right now. So, I don't want to downplay it. I just don't trust a word out of Tucker's mouth. He's not trustworthy at all.
Fish and the dead frogs and the dead birds and other animals and the chickens dying, on top of the fact that we already have this national issue with chickens not laying eggs. We haven't covered that yet, but that's another one right now that's really bizarre. And then the EPA shows up. Now, you would think we have this whole movement in America and seemingly a global movement that endlessly cares about the environment, right? You should not turn lights on. You should not drive this car. You shouldn't cook your eggs on that stove. And they're always screaming about it. But
who's screaming about it? Who screamed about you not using a gas stove? Nobody gives a shit if you give yourself or any of your kids childhood asthma because you're so deeply obsessed with the idea that, Democrats are trying to take everything over and all that garbage. Nobody cares. Okay, go nuts. Give your kids childhood asthma if that's what you want to do. No one is screaming about it but you.
But for some reason, with this thing, these toxic chemicals in our water, this unbelievable, these fires and the plume of smoke, we're going to show you another image on that looks like an atom bomb was dropped there. They're being awfully quiet on this. Here's a little bit more from Tucker.
Oh, FYI, somebody says, Emily Neptune says, granted, Fox isn't really a news channel. Well, that's the interesting thing. Actually, Fox does have a news channel, but here's the trick that they do, okay? Fox News conflates their news and their opinion pieces. They connect them together. So Tucker Carlson comes in, and he's talking about some subject. Got to think of an example here because this is important. Tucker Carlson comes in and says, was COVID leaked from a lab? No evidence to imply that. No reason to think that's the case. No reputable news organization is actually suggesting any of that stuff. But since Tucker said it, now the news side of Fox News, which is actually news, comes out and says, Tucker Carlson tonight suggests that maybe COVID leaked from a lab. So they kind of conflate their news and opinion. They connect them together and blur the line between them intentionally. Or Tucker will suggest something, and then one of the other opinion people will ask questions, just asking questions that heavily imply that this thing is true or that thing is true or whatever else. That's how they blur the line. That being said, Fox News, like actual news, is actually pretty okay. I mean, they very obviously have a conservative bias, but by and large, they're decent as a news organization. Like the written news section, as long as you're getting the news and not an opinion piece, which is, it's hard to make sure you get the news rather than opinion. As long as you're getting news and not opinion, it's decent. It's not terrible.
Basically nuked a town with chemicals. So then representatives from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, arrived to restore calm. Yes, an EPA spokesman explained chemicals from the derailed train did enter the local watershed. And yes, they did kill fish. But the drinking water supply remains totally safe. The fish are dead, but go ahead and fill your thermos and brew some coffee.
So I guess the position that they're taking is not to blame Democrats currently. I guess we're going to see if they get around to that. But they seem to be fostering division and fear of government for their audience. That seems to be what they're doing right now. I'm skipping this. I'm not killing a Bowser. That's ridiculous. What's the point? And they're also portraying white people as victims. Okay?
Everything's fine. Now, we don't know if the locals in East Palestine are drinking the water tonight, but we can tell you the Biden administration doesn't seem too concerned about it either way. Donald Trump got over 71% of the vote in the county in the last presidential election. That's not exactly the Democratic Party's core demographic. Fentanyl, toxic waste spill, whatever. They're not our voters.
Okay, that has nothing to do with anything at all. The government is working on this problem right now, first of all. But aside from all of that, the government needs to do more to help people. Absolutely, 100%. And they shouldn't be, covering this stuff up or whatever. But to portray this as like a conspiracy theory or whatever, that's just wrong. That's what Tucker does best, portray it as a conspiracy. And Dave Rubin is feeding right into it, contributing to it.
In one instance here, I don't want to be quite as cynical as Tucker is being on the election side of this thing. So I don't know that the administration is ignoring this because these are, white Trump voters there. I don't know that much.
I'm actually surprised that he said I disagree. He shouldn't have played it on there then, probably, if that's not something he agreed with directly.
Wouldn't put it past this administration because I think they're pretty bad people, but I don't know that much. The point really is...
No, you don't know anything. It's not that you don't know that much. It's that you don't know shit. You're making all kinds of baseless assumptions and claiming it as fact. That's what he's been doing this entire time.
Is that there is a reason they are ignoring this ecological disaster. I don't know that we know.
Suddenly they care about the ecosystem and the planet and all that, right?
Reason yet, but for the EPA to show up there, the Environmental Protection Agency, which is an extremely well-funded agency that has gone well beyond the bounds of what it was originally founded to do, that it is telling people drink the water with all the freaking dead fish and the dead frogs. Go ahead and drink that water. I have to say, guys, I don't
remember the EPA saying drink that water. I think the EPA said it's safe to go back, which, again, that's wrong. They were incorrect. They lied about that. Or something. It all seems completely made up to me. This outrage is completely fabricated. But the government most definitely did tell people to go home entirely too early. And the news didn't report on it enough.
Always been leery of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, because I'm a child of the 80s. And I remember this very important moment. I think this was around 1986. And this locked in my mind what a bunch of frauds the EPA are.
Egon! I tried to stop them. He says they have a warrant.
Excuse me, this is private property. Shut this off. Shut these all off.
I'm warning you, turning off these machines would be extremely hazardous.
I'll tell you what's hazardous. You're facing federal prosecution for at least a half a dozen environmental violations.
Dude, what the hell is this?
Now, either you shut off these beams or we shut them off for you.
Does anybody know what this is? This is just a movie, right? This isn't an actual real-life situation that was recorded on film. That was just for entertainment movie, wasn't it? Is that Ghostbusters what it was? Did Dave believe that was like a biography? That did he think that actually happened? Is that why he hates the EPA? What the fuck is going on right now? Are you kidding me?
As you guys know, that was Walter Peck from the Environmental Protection Agency. And what did he do, Phoenix? That's right. He shut off the ectoplasma containment unit.
It was Ghostbusters. You guys are right. Oh, my God, dude. This guy's ridiculous, isn't he?
The ecto containment unit, something. There was some plasma there, too. And what happened? All the ghosts escaped. All hell broke loose throughout the city. A couple of years later, they're, fighting this pink slime thing. You got it, guys. Then they released a movie with all chicks, which was horrible. The social justice warriors go
What? What is he going on about right now?
nuts. You see what I'm saying here. All right, let's.
No, I don't see what you're saying. Oh, is that because you are trapped in a weird little culture war echo chamber that nobody can pierce? The far right lost their minds when there was like a remake of Ghostbusters because they cast different characters or not, like they cast different actors to do it. They cast women as the actors rather than men. Like anybody cares. Nobody cared except for Dave. Although for what it's worth, I heard that the remake kind of sucked, so.
Let's get back to the serious stuff. Here's a tweet from Benny Johnson with an image of the plume of smoke over East Palestine. I mean, this is...
Oh, God. Benny Johnson is a total propagandist. So if you don't know who this guy is, let me tell you. He probably got most famous for outing himself as gay inadvertently. He started complaining that some website he was using, I forget what the website was, he starts complaining that it's recommending a gay cruise to him. And he's sick of all these websites going woke and everything. Not realizing that this website uses targeted ads, which means it only shows him things that he would be interested in. If he didn't Google gay cruise, a gay cruise ad would not have shown up on that website. It doesn't use general ads. He just doesn't know how advertising works, apparently. So anyways, yeah, Benny Johnson outed himself as gay by accident. Poor guy. And, he propagandizes for the right constantly. So I kind of have a hard time having any sympathy for him. But anyway, that's who Benny Johnson is. He's also, I think, like a news anchor on One America News or something like that. I don't even remember, like, who he works for.
This is just absolutely wild. And I thought Benny's commentary on this was quite good. He says, important reminder that the CDC, the NIH, Dr. Fauci, and every vaccine mandate tyrant who screamed at you to wear a mask so we can stay safe are totally silent as children breathe in this black death. The Karens never cared about.
Nobody is completely silent about, like, what the hell is he even talking about right now? This completely fabricated outrage. Doesn't exist.
Your safety, they only cared about power, evil frauds. I mean, look at that image. That image, if you just saw that with no context, you would think that a massive bomb, maybe an atom bomb, was dropped on a city somewhere far across the world.
Absolutely. Deeply disturbing stuff. 100% with you on this. How is this the fault of the Democrats or the fault of maskers or, people in favor of vaccines or whatever? It isn't. It's completely fabricated outrage, all of it.
That is in America, in the heartland of America, in Ohio, within the last week or so. That is absolutely just wild. So I want to talk a little bit more about the abject failure, not only of our media, but of our politicians, because obviously Biden's barely talking about it. Gay Pete, our transportation secretary, somehow has been busy doing some other stuff, mostly making sure.
Dude, what? It's like suddenly the president and his cabinet should be talking about every disaster that happened. Is Dave aware that in the past week, 3 different derailments have taken place. There's one in Texas, there's one in Palestine, and there was one in Arizona, I think. And they had chemicals on board that are deeply deadly, dangerous to people. It's not just one event that's taking place. Is Pete aware that China is flying balloons over the United States and getting adversarial? Is Dave aware that Russia is waging a war right now in Ukraine and trying to propagandize to the American people, dragging QAnoners into the conflict by spreading nonsense, conspiracy theories straight out of the Kremlin? I mean, is Dave aware that these things are taking place and that Biden has other things to deal with in addition to the train? Is he aware that typically presidents will delegate to certain people? They will give responsibility for certain situations to others because there's so much going on? Like, apparently Dave thinks that Biden should be right up close and personal, right there in the mushroom cloud, working on something, throwing rolls of toilet paper and paper towels at people, probably.
Sure, white people don't get jobs at the federal government. We'll talk about that in just a second. But then one more odd ecological thing that happened. I believe this is yesterday. Here is video of a truck filled with nitric acid.
Yeah, that's the other event that I was referring to a second ago.
That tipped over in Tucson, Arizona. What is going on here?
Let's see. Is it a road fire? No.
Yeah, nitric acid, I think. Seriously, I'm getting a little concerned.
Oh my god. Oh yeah, it's a semi.
Okay, so I am not sitting here telling you that these things are connected. I am not sitting here telling you that these things are intentional. But what I am telling you is that something weird is going on here, the way the media does not react to these things.
What's he talking about? How would he have known about this if not for the media? The media is definitely reporting on the derailments now, particularly on the Palestine-Ohio derailment. Yes, they absolutely knew about it, and we're talking about it.
However, if Donald Trump was president and this had happened, of course they would be blaming him. They would be saying, you see why this train derailed.
No, they wouldn't be. Although, to some degree, this is a little bit the Republicans' fault because they were encouraging deregulation, or at least trying to deregulate. In fact, the train company actually succeeded in lobbying the government to deregulate their safety standards, which would have made this situation not quite as bad as it was. If they had not deregulated the way that they did, this situation wouldn't have been as bad as it was. But, you know, derailments happen. I mostly blame the train company for this.
In East Palestine, it was because Donald Trump doesn't fund the EPA and we've defunded the roads and bridges and
Yeah, look, if you don't want to be blamed for deregulating, then don't deregulate. If you don't want to be blamed for lowering taxes, then don't lower taxes. Like, you can't do something and then complain people are blaming you for, like, the bad side effects of it. Are you kidding?
But they do everything for narrative. So now, Gay Pete, as you know, I call him Gay Pete because he only got the job because he's gay.
Okay, this is the second time he said this, and no, he didn't. He's had a political career for a long time. What's he talking about? He was like the mayor of a city for like ever, right?
He was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. It is a tiny little city. What about 120,000 people or something? We've checked this before.
Tiny little city? 120,000 people? Are you fucking kidding me? That's not tiny. That's bigger than the entire area that I lived in West Virginia. It's bigger than like Huntington, Charleston, Barbersville, Milton, Hurricane, Taze Valley, like that whole area. 120,000 people. Holy shit, dude. That's a lot of people. What's he talking about? That's a tiny little area. No, it's not.
Or something like 120,000 people, South Bend, Indiana. He is a sort of mini Obama clone. He comes off as deeply inauthentic. He is completely unqualified for the job.
He is not unqualified for the job. This is like saying Ketanji Brown Jackson is unqualified. No, she's not. She's more qualified than just about any other Supreme Court justice there. More qualified than just about any other. Arguably more qualified than any of them. Pete Buttigieg is not unqualified for his job. He's perfectly qualified.
So for 10 days, it might have even been 11 and a half days, he did not address this. This is the transportation secretary. I don't know what his job is other than to address massive, disastrous train derailments.
No, actually, what is the job of the, what does the transportation secretary do? Prepares needed transportation legislation, helps negotiate and implement international transportation agreements, assures the fitness of U.S. airlines, and enforces airline customer protection regulations. That's what the Department of Transportation does. As the Secretary of Transportation, I guess his job is to assist in all of these things. He's like the CEO of all of these things, basically. Delegates. He pushes people to do this thing or that thing, or directs it to do that. That's generally what it's all about, I guess. It also issues regulations to prevent alcohol and illegal drug misuse in transportation systems. So if somebody is shipping drugs through the Postal Service, I guess the Department of Transportation would handle something like that. So there you go. That's what Mayor Pete or whatever does. That's his whole job. It's not to address train derailments, but he did address the train derailment for what it's worth.
He did not address this.
Yes, he did. He did address this.
The transportation secretary. I don't know what his job is other than to address massive, disastrous.
Well, that's on you if you don't know what his job is. I didn't either. I just looked it up. It's that simple. You can find out. I mean, just load up your question go and go answer hunting. We have Google. We have the electric Google machine. We can find the answers to these things. It's not that hard. Instead, he's just going to say, I don't know. Seems like he should be doing this. I have no idea. Maybe he does something completely unrelated.
This train derailments, that seems like it would be kind of at the top of the list.
Seems like it, but it's not. Isn't that interesting? It's not. This guy has no idea what he's talking about.
But here he is a day or two ago, not addressing what's going on in East Palestine, but he is concerned that too many white people are working in the Department of Transportation.
To work with your contractors, to work with your community colleges on building a workforce that reflects the community. We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, doing the good paying jobs, don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Right.
You can build community wealth that will help close wealth gaps in this country if we can tear down those barriers. But that happens at the delivery level.
See how whacked out I was going to say.
Well, he's a politician. He's not allowed to talk about political issues, whether they're outside his wheelhouse or not. I don't understand why this matters.
Say a bad word. I'll be nice. Do you see how really ridiculous these people are?
No.
So what Pete is saying there is that now when projects, let's say road projects, infrastructure projects, come to largely black communities, that the people there are upset because the workers don't look like them?
Yes, absolutely. This is part of the problem of gentrification, right? People are coming into this field or coming into this neighborhood and changing it, building it out, working on it, making it nicer and bigger and more expensive to live, and running some of these others out. If they're going to gentrify the area this way, then they should at the very least hire the people in that neighborhood to assist with it. They should be job creators for the area. I mean, that's fair. There's an argument to be made there. I don't know. I'd have to think about it a little bit further if I said that I agreed with this directly, but yeah, hire local seems to be what he's talking about right now, right?
Who walks around in that state of racial psychosis?
Yeah, it's not racial psychosis. It's just like a policy suggestion. I don't understand why he's so pissed off here.
Except a modern progressive. Oh my God, they're here and they're fixing the roads. Can I get the color breakdown on those people? That guy over there pouring the tar is Asian. Can we count the... Think how profoundly stupid it is. But speaking of profoundly stupid, we just checked some numbers. South Bend, Indiana, where Gay Pete was the mayor, the unqualified transportation secretary.
He's not unqualified for this. I don't know why he keeps saying that. Like, this is like his... This is the third or fourth time he said this, right? This is like a joke bit that he keeps trying to go with. He keeps calling him Gay Pete because he thinks it's funny or something.
Gay Pete, 75% white. Why?
Okay, so that's actually a higher percent white than in most other areas. What is it in other areas? Isn't it about 85% white or 80% white, something like that? I'm not sure.
Why did Gay Pete not put some white people on trains? It's coming. Put some white people on trains and bus in some black people. I don't know why Gay Pete didn't do that.
I have no idea what Dave Rubin is even talking about right now. I'm just completely fucking lost. Completely lost.
I'm going to have to bring that up with Gay Pete. But Gay Pete finally did tweet about East Palestine. Finally, 12 days later.
He's just using this as like a political gotcha. I don't care if Pete tweets about this or not. I don't care what Pete tweets.
Here's what he said. I continue to be concerned about the impact of the February 3rd train derailment near East Palestine, Ohio, and the effects on families in the 10 days since their lives were upended through no fault of their own. Funny, he didn't comment on it for 10 days. It's important that families have access to useful and accurate information.
Well, he's commenting on it now. It's obviously not a cover-up exactly. I'm not sure what he's getting at.
USDOT, that's the Department of Transportation, has been supporting the investigation led by the National Transportation Safety Board. Our Federal Rail Administration and Pipelines and Hazardous Material teams were on site within hours of the initial incident and continue to be actively engaged.
Look, here's the thing about Pete, okay? Pete Buttigieg and the government and all of this stuff. It's like, should Pete have talked about this at the time? Should Pete have, like, tweeted about it or made reference to it or something when it happened? Maybe. Maybe he should have. Maybe Dave is right. But Dave isn't just making a point here. He's pushing forward a conspiracy. It's all black and white with these people, with Dave Rubin and other people on the right like this. It's constantly like there's some secret being covered up and the government is out to get you and you have to... Blah, 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 blah. It's like, it can't just be like, okay, maybe he should have, maybe he should have talked about this the other day. It can't just be like, all right, he dropped the ball. It has to be, there's a conspiracy and they're covering it up and they're out to get us and blah, blah, blah. So I'm downplaying the relevance and the importance and all the other stuff here. I'm downplaying the fact that maybe Pete should have responded or talked about this the other day. Because it's really not that important. It's not that big of a deal. But Dave Rubin wants to make it out to be the biggest deal. He wants to make this out to be like a huge cover-up, a conspiracy that the government is taking part in. I'm not going to play into it, okay? It's ridiculous.
So he said nothing. That's just a bunch of nothing. And he did it 10 days later. And we are to believe that this guy is in charge of the Department of Transportation. We have a massive...
Well, again, here's a prime example of what I'm talking about. You ever consider the possibility that maybe the guy was working on fixing it rather than doing PR? If the guy was online chronically talking about what was happening, you'd think that he was just doing PR constantly rather than actually working on the problem. Like, they are in a no-win situation here. I just want to point this out.
Environmental disaster. The environmentalists are being silent, and we have a completely unqualified head of the...
He's not unqualified. Environmentalists are not being silent. This is all made up.
Transportation Department. It is insane. I did see a few memes of Pete that I thought were worthy of showing. So I tweeted these out. If you want them, I'll post them in the locals community so you can snag those images yourself. There you go. There's Pete with his helmet riding away from the giant ecological disaster. There's Pete smiling. He's thinking about the environmental disaster. And there's Pete with his open cardigan. Today I solved racism at construction sites. Look, at the end of the day, you have to...
Dude, just these jokes and memes are so... God, what's the word I'm looking for? They're so, like... They appeal to such a narrow audience that almost nobody would get these jokes, except for, like, Dave Rubin's audience. And they are so obsessed with hating the people around them. It's just bizarre.
To laugh about these people. That's not to diminish what's going on there, but, like, these people are absolutely ridiculous. How ridiculous are they? Well, Pete continued 2 days ago, where he still at this point had not even tweeted about the incident in East Palestine. And here he is making jokes about that Chinese spy balloon.
And that's where our partnership comes in. We're providing, again, more funding, but you all are going to need to put together the local information and the localized inputs on the applications about where some of these chargers actually need to go.
Right.
So that's just one example of the partnership that we are building up, but it couldn't be a more exciting time for transportation. It's had its challenges.
Right.
I mean, if you look at what the American transportation systems have faced in the last 2 or 3 years, partly because of the pandemic, we've faced issues from container shipping to airline cancellations. Mm-hmm. Now we got balloons.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just that's okay. That's a pretty funny joke.
But also the best time ever to be working in transportation because of these resources. And we know ultimately it's in the hands of those who are on the ground that the biggest difference is going to be made.
Right, exactly. It's in the hands of the people that are on the ground, not in the hands of the CEO of, the Department of Transportation, which is Pete Buttigieg. Just the whole thing is ridiculous, man, honestly.
He's just nothing. What he is a guy with a tight haircut and a well-fitting suit who sounds like Obama, who knows nothing of what he speaks. To joke about...
That's simply not true. He knows an awful lot. He knows a hell of a lot more about this than Dave Rubin does, certainly now. Even if he weren't qualified walking into that position, he's certainly qualified now. This is actually a really interesting level, but it's very long.
About the Chinese spy balloon. I joke about everything, but it's not like this guy is a jokester, right? Like, so he dismisses it. What he wants is you to dismiss it.
Oh, I see. So Dave is allowed. This is what he's saying. I mean, you're catching this, right? Dave's allowed to make jokes about anything because he's a comedian. But if other people make jokes about things, they're not joking, they're dismissing it. It's not a joke. It's a dismissal. Unless Dave's doing it. That is so interesting. That's an interesting rationalization right there, seems to me.
He wants you to, every time you hear Chinese spy balloon or our airspace has been violated or anything else, it's just kind of funny. That's just something Republicans think about, right? It's not something real. We have no idea.
Okay, nobody said this isn't real. The Chinese balloon is 100% real. And it's a problem. Absolutely. What's he talking about right now?
First off, how many of these have come over? And we blew up one over Canada. We don't know what information they were getting from secret military sites and nuclear sites that they were flying over and what they transmitted back to the Chinese. Balloons, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. By the way, as we were playing that.
Dude, what? What's he talking about right now? Like, this is all fabricated outrage that makes no sense whatsoever.
That clip, my man Chris, working remote from another location, not in Florida. He's our employee, not in Florida. He has his reasons. He did a little Googling. 52% of construction workers are not white. So that, right? 52% not white or 52% are white? Oh, 52% are white. But that's pretty close to 50-50.
Okay, I don't know if that's even true. Don't trust any of his stats without looking it up yourself. But, okay. I don't understand. Who cares? I'm lost. Why would anybody care about that?
So if you really care whether the guy who is painting the lines in the middle of the road is white or black, you pretty much got a 50% chance.
I don't care about that. But Pete was making a point that these people that are gentrifying these areas are not hiring locally. That's really the problem. They're bringing people in from other areas to do this job when the community itself should be benefiting from the gentrification, basically. That's the idea. So Dave Rubin just misunderstands the point. Deliberately or what? I don't know. Makes no sense to me.
Chance that he's white or black or miscellaneous, okay? These people are unserious, ridiculous clowns. Oh.
This is coming from Dave Rubin, of all people. Coming from Dave Rubin. Okay, go on. Unserious, ridiculous clowns, you say.
Speaking of unserious, ridiculous clowns, Joe Biden is the elderly man pretending to be president. He did an interview here, and you can...
Yeah, that thing that he just said there, pretending to be president, that's a little dig at, election conspiracy theories.
See that the drugs were wearing off in the middle of it. He starts losing himself, which often happens. And he's also telling us not to worry about that balloon thingy.
Wasn't it a major security breach for the United States? Just the fact that the balloon came into the airspace and flew over the country for so many days?
No, look, the total amount of intelligence gathering that's going on by every country around the world is overwhelming. And the idea that a balloon could traverse, break American airspace is, anyway, it's not a major breach.
What? I don't understand the problem. What's the big deal? Yeah, he's right. There is intelligence gathering going on all across the world right now. There are U.S. politicians on Russia's payroll right now. Like, Vladimir Putin pays U.S. politicians. Which ones? Who knows? Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe. Paying them to talk shit about the Ukraine war or about funding Ukraine or whatever. That's pretty serious. That's a breach of national security in my mind, right? But these people are like hyper-focused on the balloon that, to my knowledge, gathered no intelligence whatsoever. I mean, they specifically said, the U.S. government said, that they prevented the balloon from gathering any sensitive information about anything that they were flying over. So, yeah, I don't know what the big deal is here.
You must understand that Joe Biden has no idea what he's saying, and you could see the thought sort of just jumping away from him as he's saying it.
No, I didn't see that. What's he talking about? I mean, Joe Biden had a stutter, so sometimes he starts with a word and then chooses a different word. There's that, but I didn't see a thought like disappearing or anything.
It is very clear that a violation of our airspace is a problem. And
100%. That's why Biden shot the thing down. He shot down the balloon. Absolutely.
We do not know what was being transmitted. Or perhaps we've subsequently found it out and they're not telling us. I don't trust anything from this administration anyway. But his dismissal of this, well, then why did we blow the one up over China? Why did we wait to blow this one up? Why didn't we just send it back to them and then send a sternly written, sternly worded letter?
What's he talking about? So this is an interesting catch-22 that Dave Rubin and many people on the right take part in. No matter what happens, no matter what, Biden does, no matter what Pete Buttigieg or any other Democrat does, they will find fault with it, no matter what it is, right? So, if Biden had allowed the balloon to pass by, he would have said, you didn't shoot it down, you messed up. If he shot it down, he would have said, it must have contained important information and you're lying, or you wouldn't have shot it down. No matter what decision is made, it is always the wrong decision. Now, is there anything good that Dave Rubin can say about Joe Biden or anything that he's done? Is there anything good he can say about him? There are a couple of good things that I can say about Trump. You should be able to pick out one or two good things about, anybody. If you aren't viewing things in a framing that is disingenuous and hateful by default, with just irrational hate for somebody, you should be able to find one or two good things about somebody, right? Literally everything that that Joe Biden does, Dave Rubin finds fault with. Literally every single thing.
You Chinese people, stop sending your balloons. What do you think it is, Chinese New Year? No more balloons. He's just ridiculous. But
he didn't say that. You're just making this up.
But watch this. This is just great because, as you know, it's not just Biden that's incompetent. It's not just Pete that's incompetent. It's the entire administration that's incompetent. But why do they somehow get people to vote for them? Because they have an entire structure, a mainstream media powered by big tech that goes out of its way to defend them. It not only does that, but it would do the complete reverse if it was a Republican in charge. So here's a nice video compilation of the leftist media holding water, carrying water for Joe Biden.
Wait, are they holding or carrying? I'm confused.
Republicans argued that the balloon, the size of 3 school buses, should have been taken out over the Pacific.
If you're Biden, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you...
You can't do that. You know why? Because the Pacific is not our airspace. They're saying they wanted to take it out before it entered our airspace. That would have been a full-blown act of war by China. There's no reason to shoot down a Chinese balloon or a Chinese aircraft is what it is. That'd be like, us just kind of flying near Alaska and China comes in and shoots down one of our fighter jets. That's what that would be. That's the equivalent. You can't shoot it down over the Pacific. You can't shoot it down until it violates our airspace.
You don't. Let's say he had shot this down somewhere over the country. All this metal and glass comes clanging to earth and could have hurt somebody.
And it lands on something, hurts somebody.
3 buses worth of metal will be falling down, potentially on hospitals, potentially on kindergartens. That could hit a kindergarten, a hospital, heaven forbid, fall on a kindergarten or a hospital.
Isn't it defensible that they would not want to take down something that could have hit a school or a church
or it could have contained, an agent inside of it. Not a person, but like a bioagent or any number of things. It could have contained all kinds of stuff, right? It could have contained a nuke. Could have had anything in it. Like, who knows? The U.S. government probably did, but we didn't, and it was perfectly reasonable for them to wait. If Biden had shot it down immediately, they would have complained that he was risking war with China. Since he waited to shoot it down until it was, over the Atlantic Ocean, they're complaining he didn't shoot it down sooner. If he hadn't shot it down at all, then they would have complained that he didn't shoot it down. They would have said he should have. They would have said he should have waited until it goes over the Atlantic. They will find any reason. Dave Rubin and these other right-wing extremists, congressmen and others, they will find any reason to complain, anything they can find to attack Biden or Democrats over. They'll do it.
a farmhouse.
It's easy to start spinning in the absence of more concrete information.
Well, obviously, this is serious, but I thought that producers had smelling salts on the side of the set for Republicans who came on.
Republicans practically tripped over themselves over the weekend to call out President Joe Biden.
Oh my God, this is, just hyperventilating about this.
Is there a specific part of the country where they think, or say specifically, this is where it should have been shot down? I mean, what are they talking about?
We should have shot down this balloon over the Aleutians.
Well, they simply don't know, Jake.
The administration did what politicians usually say they want administrations to do, follow the advice of the Pentagon.
Guys, the shrapnel might fall on a hospital
Or it could have contained a bioagent, or it could have contained a nuke, or it could have contained any number of things. It's completely reasonable. Look, you don't know what was in that balloon. You don't know the situation. You don't know anything about this. You know who does? The people that shot it down. They made a call. They're looking for any reason to talk shit about Biden right now, and it's transparent and ridiculous. If Trump had waited, if the Trump administration had said this, it would have been completely reasonable. I understand I don't have all the information, but the generals do. So I would have just kept my mouth shut and accepted it and said, okay, you know what? They know what they're talking about. They know more about this information than I do. I'm just going to let them make their decisions. and hope that they didn't transmit information back. As it turns out, apparently, 3 different balloons flew over the U.S. during the Trump administration. 3 balloons, Chinese in origin. And they were not shot down by Donald Trump. So take that for what you will. From my understanding, he didn't know until after.
A million opportunities to blow this thing up. I'm not diminishing the fact that you don't want 3 bus worths of metal to fall on people, but you also don't want a enemy rival nation taking pictures and video of, say, your nuclear sites or other top secret information.
Well, they already had those pictures snapped because it flew over top of Minnesota, I think, and that's where those nuclear sites are. But the U.S. government, trust them or not, for better or worse, said they jammed transmissions. They protected the area from, being sensitive to having pictures taken or anything like that. So you can believe them or not believe them. That's up to you. But that's what was said.
Now, I know we're not that very good when it comes to protecting top secret or classified information. Often I'm told if you keep it near a Corvette, that somehow will keep you safe.
Again, another culture war issue that this guy is feeding into. Biden had some documents in his garage near his Corvette, his locked garage. That's what he's referring to. But this is like another example of Dave being in an echo chamber.
But of course, this is just the complete reverse. Imagine if Trump was president, a Chinese spy balloon went over.
This actually happened.
And then Trump didn't shoot it down until it had traversed.
This literally happened. He didn't shoot it down at all. It just flew right back to China.
First, the whole country and everything else. The exact same frauds that you just watched there would be saying, this proves that China is in charge and they have information on Trump and somehow this is related to Russia. And
no to all of that. See, this is the problem with the political right at this moment in time, Dave Rubin particularly. They think in blacks and whites. It's either completely made up and baseless or it works to their advantage. Everything is about Russia or it's not. No, sometimes things really are actually about Russia. Sometimes Russia does come into the mix. Sometimes Russia pays politicians in the United States to propagandize for them. Sometimes politicians work with Russia. Like Paul Manafort was indicted for his role working with Russia. There were something like 34 indictments of people for propagandizing for Russia, for lying and sending information back to them and stuff, right? With the Mueller investigation. They just have a vested interest in making it out like this is all fake. It's not.
Trump is weak and blah, 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 blah.
Trump is weak.
Get it. But really, the point of all of this really is that why is it that these people 3 weeks ago, or whatever it was, 2.5 weeks ago, felt that the Chinese spy balloon, as it was traversing the country, it was the biggest freaking deal known to man.
Well, the story went viral. That's what happens with viral stories.
But then they will defend the guy who so nonchalantly dealt with it, right? And who clearly doesn't even know what he's doing. China has satellites that spy on us. We have satellites that spy on China. They don't need a balloon. So what type of provocation really was this? What really is going on here?
Well, see, here's the thing. You don't know, Dave. He has no idea. He has no clue. He does not have the information necessary to come to any conclusions about this. So what's the next step? Make shit up. The next step is to make shit up.
I don't have the answer to, but I assure you, you will not get the answer by watching corporate press. Interestingly, here is video from CBS News that U.S. intelligence knew the balloon was on its way before it even got here. So we could have blown it up when it wouldn't have fallen on a hospital, a kindergarten, a bowling alley, or, God forbid, an ice skating rink.
Okay, I don't understand what he's saying with the ice skating rink thing. That may be another culture war issue that I'm not privy to, but we can't shoot it down until it enters our airspace. It's not a provocation until it enters our airspace. Otherwise, it would be an act of war on China.
Back here in Washington, there is breaking news tonight on that Chinese spy balloon. CBS News has just learned that U.S. intelligence watched the high-flying airship as it lifted off near China's south coast. That means the U.S. military had been tracking it for nearly a week before it entered U.S. airspace, longer than originally known. CBS's Nancy Cordes is at the White House. So, Nancy, they were watching this from the beginning?
They were, Nora, and what they saw was this balloon heading east from China towards Guam and Hawaii. But then it took a sharp northward turn, a beeline towards Alaska.
You know, it's possible. I don't know how all of this works, and I'd venture to guess that Dave Rubin doesn't either. I'm guessing the U.S. is probably looking at logs. I'm guessing this stuff is tracked automatically. Oh, my God. I'm guessing this stuff is tracked automatically, and we don't watch it directly, like every single item. I mean, who knows? Who knows? I don't have any idea. So they were probably, like, they could refer back to the logs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody was conscious and aware and directly watching and informing the president or whoever else of the progress of this thing. Maybe they just referred back after. Who knows? Dave certainly doesn't know.
They also revealed today that the 3 subsequent objects they shot down probably were not involved in spying.
The 3 objects shot down this weekend may have been harmless research balloons. That's now a leading theory for the intelligence community.
There's strong consideration that these objects are indeed benign.
They won't.
Right. So, okay. This is a reference to the unidentified flying objects that were just shot down over the U.S. recently. We don't know what they were. Congress was given a briefing on these UFOs. They're cylindrical objects about the size of a car, give or take, and they've been shooting them down. Unfortunately and weirdly, after shooting them down, the U.S. was hoping and expecting somebody to complain about it, I think. They were hoping someone was going to say, hey, that was our whatever. You can't just shoot our shit down. But nobody came out. No one, said, hey, that was mine. You can't shoot my stuff down. Just radio silence, which is deeply confusing. Like, who did these cylindrical objects belong to? No one has any idea. And they remain UFOs for that reason, unidentified flying objects. They had no obvious means of propulsion. They are apparently not balloons. And evidently, this has been going on. I mean, they've been flying these around since 2017, at least. It's been going on for a long time. People just aren't sure. They don't know. They don't know what's going on with these. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. So, there's a lot of speculation that it's aliens. I don't believe it's aliens. I need evidence for that. I'm willing to accept that it's aliens if there is enough evidence. There just isn't.
Won't know for sure until they find the debris.
They're in very difficult terrain.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff described the challenge. One object came down in the Arctic Circle, where it's minus 40 degrees. The second came down in a hard-to-reach part of the Canadian Rockies. And the third plunged into Lake Huron, a couple of 100 feet deep.
We'll get them eventually, but it's going to take some time to recover those.
Do you guys get what happened here? We knew the thing was coming, and then it's on its way to Guam. It's on its way to Hawaii.
Yeah, this is all happening now because apparently we have this system called NORAD in the United States that tracks objects in our airspace, basically. And we increased the sensitivity of it after the balloon situation, the Chinese balloon. And we discovered a whole bunch of objects in our airspace that didn't belong there. So the U.S. decided to shoot them down. Now, I don't know who these belong to, if it's Chinese in origin or what. I have no idea. But, yeah.
Why? And it's on its way to Alaska, and we didn't do anything about it. I'm not a geologist. I don't have a map in front of me or even, well, I guess I've got a globe behind me. But you know what's between Guam and Hawaii and Alaska? Water.
If it's not in our airspace, we can't shoot it down.
Cool, crisp,
Dude, how much you want to bet that's actually alcohol he's drinking?
Refreshing water. And we could have blown this thing up. We could have blown it up. If let's just say we don't know. They're just sending out their little benign balloon. It's floating around. We don't know what's happening. It does seem like it's going in our direction, but okay, we don't want to be, intentionally provocative. How about the moment it crossed U.S. airspace? Since when do we let other countries just fly some shit in?
Well, that's what they've been doing, is shooting it down after it enters our airspace, but before it actually enters land. We've been shooting it down then, recently. That was the whole thing with, shooting down these UFOs. That's what they've been doing, shooting down stuff that was in our airspace but still over water. I think like 25 miles or something like that past the coast is still technically our airspace, from my understanding. I'm not really super clear on exactly when it becomes our airspace or what, but yeah. Dave is just making something out of nothing here, of course.
We don't know what it is. Might be benign. Could be an EMP. Who knows? Let's just see what happens. It's so profoundly ridiculous that it is. Well, speaking of profoundly ridiculous, I've got a clip of.
I don't understand why this is so profoundly ridiculous to him.
Let's see what happens. It's so profoundly ridiculous that it is. Well, speaking of profoundly ridiculous, I've got a clip of Justin Trudeau because he's concerned.
God, I thought he was going to say Justin Bieber for some reason. The Biebs. I wonder if Dave is a believer.
Because UFOs are flying over North America, and, we had to shoot one down over his country because he was probably busy, buying new socks.
What? No. He just didn't have the fighter jets scrambled to shoot it down. And he asked the U.S. as a NATO ally to shoot it down for him. So they did. Simple as that. He finds every reason to hate everybody around him, doesn't he?
NORAD told the Associated Press this weekend that they have an idea of what this aircraft is. Is there any reason we don't have more information on what this aircraft is?
Our focus right now is on recovering it. Obviously, there is much analysis going on at the highest levels of NORAD in both Canada and the United States to try and understand more, to facilitate in the location of the object, and to understand better and be able to answer the questions that Canadians have. And as soon as we have more clarity and better answers to give to Canadians, we will be giving them.
So this is 3 aircraft shot down this weekend, or this past weekend. Do we have no idea whether this is a pattern or whether these are connected?
Well, I think obviously there is some sort of pattern in there. The fact that we are seeing this in a significant degree over the past week is a cause for interest and close attention, which is exactly what we're doing. We've deployed significant resources here to be able to recover the object, as well as diplomatic and international engagements going on to find more information and to get solutions on this.
You got.
That's kind of interesting. From my understanding, the briefing that the congressmen and others went through regarding these unidentified objects, the briefing basically said, we don't know exactly what it is. We don't think it's, affiliated with the government, because nobody has taken credit for it. Or if it is affiliated with the government, it's a new technology and they didn't want us to know about it, which will be really useful to us once we get it. Because like I said earlier, these UFOs have no obvious means of propulsion, basically. They don't know how they're getting around. So I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting. We'll see what happens with it. Right-wing pundit. I don't know what Pete's job is, but he is unqualified for it. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. He's unqualified to, that's all Dave talks about. Gay Pete, he said. Gay Pete is unqualified to be the transportation secretary. No idea what he does exactly, but he's unqualified. Trust me. I don't even live that far from East Palestine, and no one is talking about it here. That's deeply concerning. How far are you? God, you can just at me in the chat if you want. You don't have to send another super chat if you don't want to. But yeah, how far? Are you within 100 miles or something like that? Because I've heard that the 100-mile range is at risk of effects of this stuff being around. So good luck. God, I hope you're okay. I lived about 200 miles away from Palestine, so that's not fantastic. Alpha Force Zero's whole family lives about 200 miles away from Palestine, Ohio.
Got it. It's just meaningless drivel. Also, why was he reporting from Hoth, the ice planet of Hoth? Did you see the Tauntaun run by?
Dude, it's Canada. It basically is Hoth, okay?
Him back there, which was making me think. You remember at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, do you know how the whole thing begins, since Trudeau was obviously standing on Hoth? Remember, the rebels have a base, and Vader, he's pissed, and he wants to take out the rebels, especially that Skywalker dude who just blew up his big ship, the Death Star, at the end of Part 1. So what does he do? He sends a bunch of satellite spies. They're not balloons, but they're electronic devices. He shoots them all over the galaxy. One lands in Hoth. They find the satellite there, the spy satellite, and then what does Han Solo and Chewie do when
they blast it?
First, they have to save Luke from the Wampa. Wait, did that happen after? Did they save Luke from the Wampa first or after? Anyway.
Oh my God, he's getting off on a ridiculous tangent. I don't know what this has to do with anything at all. But just for the record, I've seen the Star Wars movies 15,000 times or some crazy shit, and Chewie and Han, or Chewie at the very least, was out in the cold, saw that little black droid that was flying around, the little spy droid, blasted it, and then they got invaded by the Empire after that.
Moot point. That's a sidebar. But what do? They don't wait to go, is that thing benign, or is it actually spying on us, and they're going to blow up our generator and we're not going to be able to get the ships off Hoth? They blow the fucking thing up. You see the point, guys? We're governed by...
I'm trying real hard. I'm trying to see the point. What is the point? Is he saying that people should blow up? What? They already blew stuff up. I don't understand. Didn't they already blow up the whatchamacallit things? The whatchamahoozits? Didn't they already blow up the little flying cylindrical UFO things? They did blow it up, right? What's the point? Is he complaining that they didn't blow them up?
By morons. I would much rather have whoever was in charge, the rebel leader at Hoth, would be a hell of a lot better than Justin Trudeau. Here's Karine Jean-Pierre.
Well, absolutely. The rebel leader of Hoth would most definitely be a fantastic leader. Obviously, yes. No question about that one.
She doesn't know what's going on.
Karine Jean-Pierre is who is about to talk here. She is the press secretary, I believe. She's the one that speaks for the White House, for the president. She has notes and she answers questions and stuff.
For this point, but on the criticism
That's her.
Coming from lawmakers that the president hasn't spoken out more on this, should we expect to hear from him at some point, or is part of the reason that we're not hearing from him because, as you said, people shouldn't be panicking? Is there a concern that the president?
I don't have any announcement or anything to preview on a potential, remarks by the president.
Should people be panicking? A bunch of UFOs were shooting things down, spy balloons over here. She don't have anything. How the hell am I supposed to know? I just put on these colorful outfits and do my perm and get out there and just say I don't know what I'm doing. That's
sad, man. Dave Rubin, basically what Dave is saying here is she's worthless because she's a woman. I don't know. I just go out there and I get my hair permed and that's it. That's all I do. That's my value to the world. What is wrong with this guy, honestly?
My job. Ugh. Guys, there are so many bad actors here. There are bad actors like across the board.
What gives him the idea that Karine Jean-Pierre is a bad actor? What gives him the idea Biden is a bad actor? I don't understand. People that are like nefarious and are setting out to like wreck the system and destroy things. That's what I assume he means when he says bad actor. In what way is Karine Jean-Pierre a bad actor?
Our political leaders, our media leaders, our tech leaders. There's just so many like corrupt buffoons in charge of everything, right?
What gives him that? I mean, sure, yeah, there were probably some corrupt buffoons in charge, absolutely. But the specific people he's talking about right now, Karine Jean-Pierre, press secretary, and Biden specifically, what gives him the idea that those two people are corrupt buffoons?
Right now, it is, thank God we live in Florida. So right after this show, instead of punching a random person, as I used to do when we lived in California. I can just walk outside and see a lizard. That really is what's keeping me going at this point. They lied to you guys. They lie about everything, and they will lie again. And you.
What did she lie about? She didn't lie about anything, did she? She just said, I don't have any information to give you right now. What's the lie?
You must just keep going to the truth. You must not fear the mob judgment if you say, well, I'm curious about that balloon over there, and I'm a little worried about that atom bomb-looking explosion over there, and all of that stuff. We have to focus on what we can control. That's all of our local stuff, right? That's what states' rights and all that is about. Because now, to get us back to the beginning of the show when we talked about this one world government, well, Klaus Schwab continued at the conference. And tell me if this doesn't. I mean, the guy is right out of Casting 101. Give me the most evil-sounding guy possible with the most evil-sounding script. Could you do that? Here we go.
Okay, so if you're not familiar with Klaus Schwab, this is the guy right here. Okay, I don't know which part this is. This could still be part one. But at the very beginning of this, he talked about Klaus Schwab, which is the leader of a group, I think it's like a United Nations NGO, basically, called the World Economic Forum. It's basically like a think tank that, you know, works with very rich people like Bill Gates and others to try to improve society in various ways for different people, right? So, for example, they will plan and orchestrate the production and distribution of massive amounts of vaccines. So, like in India, for example, there is a polio epidemic happening. Or in an African country, there's a polio epidemic happening, or there's a measles epidemic. So Bill Gates has $50 million, and he has 100,000 polio vaccine doses. And the World Economic Forum will help Bill Gates or whoever else figure out the most effective place to distribute those vaccine doses to increase the number of lives saved, basically. That's what the World Economic Forum is. But a conspiracy theory formed around the WEF when they said COVID is a unique opportunity to improve the living conditions of the poorest people on planet Earth by reworking or resetting global economies or the economies of certain world governments to be more favorable and equitable to the working class rather than to the billionaire class. That's basically what the Great Reset was. Was there an actual plan? No, there wasn't. There was no plan provided. But it was a suggestion like, hey, this is an opportunity to try to reset the world economies to be more equitable and favorable to these groups of people. And lo and behold, a bunch of conspiracy theories came out of the woodwork against the World Economic Forum, against Klaus Schwab, and made all kinds of claims about him trying to create a one-world government and blah, 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 blah. Weird how somebody suggests making things more equitable on a world scale, and suddenly conspiracy theories come out of the woodwork. Isn't that interesting? So anyway, that's Klaus Schwab. They propagandized about this guy just at the beginning of this Dave Rubin clip. Apparently he had things to say, more things to say. So let's listen.
Now, where we move into the exponential phase. And I agree. Artificial intelligence, but not only artificial intelligence, but also the metaverse, near space technologies, and I could go on and on, synthetic biology. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected, and who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world.
If you master those technologies, you'll be the master of the world.
Okay, he's trying to read some conspiracy theory into this when the guy is just colloquially saying these technologies are going to be really popular in 10 years. And it's a good investment if you wanted to, like, invest in improving these technologies or whatever, then you'll probably benefit a lot. That seems to be the point that he was making. It's not like he's trying to create a one-world government. These are all conspiracies. This is all garbage spread by the far right. And it's honestly depressing to see how far down the right-wing pipeline Dave Rubin has gone. Like, how do you get this lost in right-wing propaganda? This is pretty lost in it, right? When people are talking about the, World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, and blah, blah, blah. It's just nuts, man.
Sort of godlike. Remember when John Kerry said, we're like gods. We're like gods here doing our environmental thing. We're so great.
No, I don't remember him saying that. What are you even talking about? Like, this is all conspiracy BS, all of it.
We're such gods. I mean, like the script, you get it? Like, who would say something like that? But there's just tons of them. There are tons of them, and they're hypocrites, and they're liars, and they're buffoons.
In what ways? Who? Specifically, give me names. Tell me what things they did that makes you think they're hypocrites, liars, and buffoons. Like, this conspiracy theory just confuses the hell out of me because there is no solid information to be had about it. Anyways, yeah, let's keep listening to Dave Rubin carry water for, like, propagandists and just weird, man. Keep listening.
And they would never live the way they want you to live. So here is a guy who invented viruses. Not the first inventor of viruses, but invented viruses on computers. I'm pretty sure I can say that. I'm sure NewsGuard's going to fact check me. But remember when computers came out, like sort of ubiquitously across America, late 80s, early 90s? We started, the Apple computer was first. Then we had these IBM computers, then all these knockoffs, and they all had Windows. And then suddenly viruses. You would go to open up a window, there would be a virus, 5 more viruses. And mostly, you kids don't know this, but back in our day when we had computers and we'd sit at the desk with the computer, mostly you were just closing windows because viruses just kept popping up. It was just a lot. People's fingers were like this. There was a condition because you were just all day long closing viruses on your...
He's talking about pop-ups, I guess. He obviously didn't know what he was doing, but okay. I do remember that time period because because my dad owned a computer repair shop. I have used computers since I was a tiny little tyke. I was a little itty-bitty fella when I used my first computer. I was writing calculators in C when I was 9 years old, and other things. I've been programming since I was 9, but I really started doing it, like, a lot, and really getting into it and reading these books and stuff when I was about 12, give or take. 12, 13 years old, somewhere in there. So I've been involved in the computer world since the 90s. And, oh my God, I just straight up jumped right over the top of that pole. So, yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I remember pop-ups, but then you just hit Control, Alt, Delete, and then close. You didn't have to select Task Manager. It just opens the Task Manager back then. And you just close the web browser and problem solved. All of the... This guy just had no idea how to use computers, apparently. Okay.
Your computer. Of course, Windows was created by Bill Gates. Bill Gates is the biggest climate hypocrite there is. He got asked by a journalist about his climate hypocrisy and what he...
Dude, how are we getting off on this tangent? I don't understand. This is one long run-on sentence, and, I mean, from the very beginning, we are 42 minutes into this clip from Dave Rubin, and this is the same exact sentence that he started with at the very beginning. Anyways, how did we get on the subject of Bill Gates being a hypocrite, a climate activist, and then creating Windows? What? I don't understand. For what it's worth, Bill Gates actually stole the idea of creating an operating system with a user interface that has a mouse that you click things and all of that. He stole that idea from Xerox, and Steve Jobs stole the idea at the exact same moment and got really upset that Bill Gates stole it too, basically. And there's a big famous confrontation between the two of them where Bill Gates with crazy eyes said, "You're like a thief who walked in and saw somebody else there stealing a TV, and then you get upset about it," or something like that. It was really psychotic, but super interesting. Bill Gates is generally a pretty good guy now, but we're off subject. Let's listen to Dave here.
Tries to back out of it, but bleh.
What do you say to the charge that if you are a climate change campaigner, but you also travel around the world on a private jet, you're a hypocrite?
Well, I
personally, I feel like this is the same charge that people level against others who believe that taxes should be higher. Like, I believe that taxes should be higher, but I'm not personally sending more money to the government than I'm legally expected to, basically. That doesn't make me a hypocrite, because I don't want, like, me paying more taxes isn't going to change much. I want everybody else to pay more in taxes, including me. I think everybody should. And, Bill Gates is doing a lot of work in climate activism to try to improve the world, improve the situation that we found ourselves in. And part of that is getting around. To do that, he has to get around. He has to go places to improve conditions and situations. Companies are some of the biggest polluters around. Companies should be held responsible for that and pay a carbon tax, or be forced to take part in some amount of environmental cleanup or whatever. If I have to take a private jet somewhere to convince politicians to push that out as law to improve the situation for everybody, I'm totally okay with that, honestly. I don't really, if you're just running around all willy-nilly using a private jet to do whatever and have a good time, that's one thing. That's not really what he's doing exactly.
By the gold standard of funding Climeworks to do direct air capture that far exceeds my family's carbon footprint. And
yeah, that's basically what I said, yeah.
I spend billions of dollars on climate innovation. So, should I stay at home and not come to Kenya and learn about farming and malaria? Anyway, I'm comfortable with the idea that not only am I not part of the problem by paying for the offsets, but also through the billions that my Breakthrough Energy group is spending, that I'm part of the solution.
Absolutely. He's most definitely part of the solution, for sure. If it's a requirement for him to get to these places in a private jet to find solutions to these problems, I'm okay with him using a private jet.
No, you're not part of the solution. And yes, you should stay home, much like you endorsed.
Well, see, that's the problem. Dave doesn't believe there's a problem at all. Dave can't say that he's not part of the solution if there is no problem in the first place in his mind, right?
For us plebes to stay at home and be locked down. When you...
Dude, nobody's trying to lock anybody down over climate change. What?
We're, of course, part of the solution. And yes, you should stay home, much like you endorsed for us plebes to stay at home and be locked down. When you were, of course, staying home during COVID, you have, I don't know, he's probably got a dozen houses, billions of dollars worth of
he does, yeah, absolutely. He's filthy rich.
Real estate. He's the #1 farmland owner in the United States. Should he not get on his private plane and go to Kenya? I'm pretty sure the people, the Bill Gates plane is landing. You think the people are like, oh, it's Bill Gates. We're so excited. Bill Gates is here. Bill.
Well, like I said, Bill Gates, people don't realize how much he does. He's a philanthropist. You have no idea how much money and time and effort he puts into helping people. Like, oh my God. He spends just an obscene amount of money on vaccines for people to help them, people who wouldn't otherwise be able to access this stuff, improving the living conditions of others. Holy shit, dude. If you're going to have a philanthropist, a filthy rich philanthropist, you would want it to be Bill Gates. He does so much good work. Oh my God. He used to be a scumbag. Back in the day, he was a scumbag, a terrible person. in his old age, he has really improved the living conditions of, you have no idea how many people. So many people. If I remember, this is from Innate Conversations. If I remember correctly, someone tried to sell Microsoft a GUI system, which is like the user interface thing. I think it was Windows 3.1.1 was the first real user interface on a computer. It may have been earlier, may have been later, but it was the first commercial one at the very least, is what I mean. The first commercial one. But Microsoft declined because they thought it would take off. Then they petitioned Apple, and Apple implemented it, and it took off. So then Microsoft implemented it. Okay, I didn't really remember how it played out exactly, but yeah, there's a big conflict between Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, who were both scumbags back then. Steve Jobs kind of continued on to be a scumbag in, later in life. That's all beside the point. But yeah, there's a big battle between them.
We just have to keep exposing these people because they will mandate more rules on your life, and an awful lot of people are going to disappoint you when they...
What rules did Bill Gates mandate for anybody? What is he talking about? Like, this whole thing is completely made up, all of it. There, at no point was there ever a mandate from Bill Gates or from the federal government. Through the course of the pandemic, there was never a mandate for anybody. There was never a federal lockdown, and there was never a vaccine mandate. There's a testing mandate, which you could be exempt from if you got vaccinated. So if you weren't vaccinated, you had to take a COVID test like once a week by your, mandated by the federal government on all employers. They had to test you once a week. That's not a vaccine mandate. There was no COVID lockdown federally. Some states implemented a COVID lockdown. Some, temporarily. And honestly, it wasn't even a lockdown. People were free to go out. You just couldn't keep your businesses open, basically. And the government paid these companies through PPP loans to keep their employees paid, to keep their doors open, technically. So I don't even know what he's talking about. Bill Gates, imposing mandates on people. What?
They do. They will come back with masks, whether it's COVID-9 or environment related or whatever it might be. They will come.
COVID-9? Why did he call it COVID-9?
Come back with more booster shots and all of the stuff. And this one's going to blow your mind. I saw this one yesterday. This is just incredible. Do you know, this is true, ladles and jelly spoons, this is totally true, that the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is still recommending masks on 2-year-olds now.
Okay, masks are helpful. They can be helpful. They decrease the number of infections. Yeah, of course, because you're not blowing particles out. Watch what happens. Watch, okay? I'm going to do a little demonstration here real quick. Let me blow this puppy up. Now watch this. I'm going to take in. This is me without a mask, okay? That's just me breathing out regularly, right? I have to do this quickly because the vapor dissipates. All right, now this is me with a mask, all right? Nothing. How about that? Interesting, right? It's because it blocks the airflow from going out further. The virus can escape through the mask, no problem. That's true, but it prevents air from going and spreading through the room as quickly or as easily. Does it prevent a lot of infection? Maybe not anymore, since the virus mutated. It's gotten easier and easier for the virus to pass through masks. With new variants, there was less efficacy in masking, but it does help prevent the spread at least a little bit. And who fucking cares? Why is it that big of a deal? Why does Dave care that much to throw a fit over people wearing a mask? Is it really that big of a deal? Of course, the CDC recommends mask wearing. Yes, they do. Why do you care? Why is it a big deal? Vorkvoid says you can die in a car accident if you wear a seatbelt, but you should still wear it, is how I explain it. Yeah, that's a good point. It prevents some infection. Seatbelts prevent some deaths. Right. but they're like obsessed with people, you know, persecuting them for forcing them to wear a mask. You guys want to see something interesting, actually? Let me show you this. I found this clip the other day, and I saved it because I thought I could do something with it eventually. Yeah, I meant to save this video. Let me just save it real quick. All right, let me just blow this up for you real quick so you guys can see what I'm doing, too. This is the podcast. This is my new clips source thing. Downloads. Okay. Just gonna cut this out. Okay, now I'm gonna blow it up. Actually, before I blow it up, let me just cut some of the cut some of this off here real quick. 357. That'll do. Okay. And then I'm going to cut some of the left off again, just a little bit. There we are. Now I'm going to copy, paste, drag up, blow this up a little more. Give it the old Gaussian blur over here. Increase the blur. Move it to the left just a hair. That should do the trick. Awesome. Now create new clip. And now normalize the audio. 6. Cool. Should be it. Now let me save it. Okay, cool. Got it. Make sure that it's named properly. Cool. And then save it to clips. 219. Save. Awesome. All right, now let me pull this clip up for you. That was a lot of work, but that's how I do it. That's what I do every Sunday and every day, basically. I'm doing clips like that, trying to organize them, produce them, and clean them up. And I have a massive clips folder where I go through the process of cleaning clips up and cleaning up audio and fixing them and everything. If you want to see the clips folder, you can. Just go to telltaleatheist.com/clips. It's free. I'm not selling you anything. You can just access every clip I've ever talked about since, I think, 2020 or something. Anyway, it's interesting what Dave was saying a minute ago about, what was it? Let me step back, listen again.
So Rochelle Walensky, who is in charge of the CDC, she was testifying yesterday in front of Congress, still defending this concept. I do want to mention one thing. I told you guys when we went to D.C. a couple months back.
Right. I find it fascinating that Dave Rubin is complaining about people wearing masks and stuff like that. Check out this clip from, I think, the 80s when they were prohibiting people from drinking alcohol while driving. Listen to this.
Still, any attempt to restrict drinking and driving here is viewed by some as downright undemocratic.
It's kind of getting common this when a fella can't put in a hard day's work, put in 11, 12 hours a day, and then get in your truck and at least drink 1 or 2 beers.
They're making it laws where you can't drink when you want to. You have to wear a seatbelt when you're driving, and pretty soon we're going to be a communist country.
Seriously, this has been going on since the 80s. Same talking points. It's absurd. Completely and totally absurd. It just blows me away that this is what was happening all the way back then even. It's crazy. So anyways, yeah, Dave Rubin is going to be viewed this exact way, in my opinion. Are you kidding me? You're unwilling to wear a mask to help save people's lives? Yeah, maybe it reduces infection by 2%. Who knows? Hell, maybe it reduces it by 50%. I have no idea. I don't have the studies in front of me. They're out there. There's an objective answer to be had here. But even if it were only 2%, you are saving the lives of 2% of the people around you by just wearing a mask. And he's throwing a fit about it and pretending to be persecuted, and he's a victim. He's always the victim in every situation, isn't he? Just embarrassing and sad. There is a chart for the percent effectiveness of each type of mask, and with just or both wearing masks. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't know what the chart looks like. I don't know where it is or whatever else, but, you know, there's a percentage of people who are saved by wearing masks. Absolutely. Why is he so opposed to helping a small percentage of people? Why?
That I was walking, they have the tunnel, I think, that goes between, what was it, between the Capitol and the, where Congress...
Talking about going to Washington, D.C.
The congressional offices, basically. So there's this underground tunnel. We're walking through the tunnel, and I walked right by Walensky. Like, we basically touched shoulders. And
who? I don't know that name, I don't think.
There was something about her, I kid you not. We all looked at each other like, she does not seem human. She might be some sort of lizard person. NewsGuard, you can check me on that one.
Dude, are you kidding me? You must be joking. There's a guy named David Icke. I don't know if you guys have heard of this guy before, but he is a total conspiracy theorist. He's the one who popularized the claim that, you know, lizard people run the world or whatever. In conspiracy circles, if you've never run in these circles before, the people who believe that the world is run by lizard people call them Arcturians. They believe it's an alien race who is out to control the world and blah, blah, blah. You know how these conspiracy theorists are. They believe they're out to control the world, and they think that the lizard people are Arcturians, and some people have even come out and claimed to be Arcturians. Like, QAnon believes that Q, the guy who started QAnon in the first place, is an Arcturian secretly. There's a QAnon group that follows a woman named Ramana Didulo. The people who follow her believe her to be an Arcturian. They're basically lizard people. They are alien lizard people who came to planet Earth from a faraway, distant planet to control everything and everybody around them, basically. That's the idea behind it. But Ramana Didulo, the Arcturian to whom they're referring, is a good lizard person. She works for the people rather than for the evil to control the world or whatever. It's all completely made up. It is the pinnacle of conspiracy theory. And it's honestly embarrassing to see how far Dave Rubin has fallen. He is now buying into the craziest conspiracy theories in existence, in my opinion. Absolutely nuts.
Because I'm pretty sure we'll find something very disturbing and cold-blooded. Anyway, here's CDC's Rochelle Walensky defending masks on 2-year-olds.
Oh, that's who he was talking about. He passed the leader of the CDC. I didn't know who that person was.
Yesterday.
In fact, the CDC is currently the only national or international public health agency that recommends masking 2-year-old children. I'd like you to explain in detail the process and the timeline by which evidence such as this is used by the CDC to update, modify, or necessary withdraw current guidance.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify on those
Oh, that's her. Okay. Interesting. That's Walensky, apparently.
points. So I believe you're referring to the Cochrane Review study. This is an important study, but the Cochrane Review only includes randomized clinical trials. And as you can imagine, many of the randomized clinical trials that were included in that were for other respiratory viruses, not COVID-19. Some of them were for COVID-19, just to be clear, but it is very different for COVID-19 because you have a virus that different from flu, potentially different from SARS or MERS, transmits before you actually have symptoms. It's also the case that one of the limitations in that study was clearly stated that people were not actually engaged in the intervention. So you actually have to wear the mask for it to work.
Okay.
So there
Dr.
are lots of
Walensky?
studies now in Georgia.
Dr. Walensky, why are we masking our kids today?
You know, thank you. Also, so our guidance for school-based masking is related to our COVID-19 community levels. And fortunately, we're in a
Wait, 2-year-olds? Oh my God, I didn't mean to hit that. I'm just going to die again. 2-year-olds are not in school, but okay.
place now in this country where most of our country is in green or yellow.
So what is your timeline for updating, reevaluating these guide?
Who cares? Why doesn't the CDC just keep the guidelines out forever? Yeah, I recommend that we always mask 2-year-olds until the end of time. No, that's just guidance. That's not federal law. You're not forced to, keep a mask on your 2-year-olds. It's not like a command, like if you don't do it, then you're going to prison or something. I don't know why she cares if this is updated or not. It's irrelevant. They must find a reason to be persecuted, right? There's always some reason why they are mistreated and persecuted terribly. It's obnoxious and ridiculous.
Guidance.
Our masking guidance doesn't really change with time. What it changes with is disease.
Pure abject nonsense. Now, I hope, and I know if you're...
How is that pure abject nonsense? He didn't debunk anything. He just called it nonsense.
You're watching this show, you are no longer listening to the CDC, and you should not. You don't have to listen to me. You should make whatever choices are right for you and your family and everything.
You should look at the science and the data. Luckily, the CDC releases the science and the data and bases their decisions off of it. So you should actually listen to the CDC because they base it off of science and data. Feel free to check that and make sure they're telling the truth, because government organizations do lie from time to time. But they're not hiding anything. They're not covering anything up. They're not preventing you from accessing this data, saying, oh, you're not smart enough to understand it, so we're just not going to provide the data to you. That's not happening. This guy just lives in a fantasy land where he wants to demonize the CDC no matter what it takes, and it's just disgusting, man.
Everything else. I can tell you, I got 2 kids downstairs, both of whom are actually a little under the weather right now, and David's a little under the weather too. We're running an infirmary here right now. I'm the only one operating at 100%, so I'm going to have a very crazy day after I finish this. There's going to be a lot of spit up all over me, is what it is. That's just fine. I am never putting masks. I mean, the idea that you would put a mask on a 2-year-old because that crazy, dishonest blank, fill in the blank yourself, wants you to do it after.
I don't understand. No, that's not why people are putting masks on 2-year-olds. First of all, it's because the science indicates that it's the best thing for them. It's the safest thing to do. It keeps people safe, first of all. And second, what's the problem? I don't understand. Do you wear pants when you go to the store? Do you wear a shirt or socks? What's the deal? Why do you care so much? Why is she a crazy blank for suggesting you wear a mask?
After all of this time, after lying about everything, lying about social distancing and masking, we know now.
They didn't lie about any of that stuff. The CDC did not lie about any of that. Where is this coming from? It's like he just asserts garbage baselessly and repeats it so much that people believe it with absolutely no reason.
Now, go to CVS, go to Walgreens, go to the pharmacy of your choice, pick up a box of masks, and you know what it says on the side? Does not prevent COVID. This crazy woman...
That's correct. It doesn't prevent COVID. You know what it does prevent? I did a demonstration earlier. It prevents airflow from moving further away from your face, which means if somebody comes within 20 feet of you and you're both wearing a mask, you're less likely to catch COVID than if you weren't wearing a mask, because the airflow is restricted when you wear a mask. But if you think that, a single N95 or a single paper mask over your face is going to, you can get in someone's face and breathe right into them and they're not going to get COVID, well, you're just not looking at the science. The science never suggested anything like that at any point. It's so black and white with people like Dave Rubin and others. Either the masks prevent COVID or they do not. Either I am safe to wear a mask and go out in public, or I am not. That's not how science works. That's not how any of this works. And I believe that people like Dave Rubin know that. I don't think that his listeners understand that. I think they're a little, they're not quite... Maybe they're just a little too dense to get the nuances here. But Dave Rubin, I think he knows that. He's not an idiot. He plays one on TV, but he's not actually an idiot, in my opinion. There are percentages, there are statistics that we can look at. Even if it reduces deaths by 0.5%, it's worth it to wear a mask. Honestly, A mask is now a permanent part of my winter garb because it's so much warmer to wear a mask in the winter. Why don't people wear masks more often, honestly? It just blows me away that he has come to the point that he has, where he propagandizes for people like this. Why?
Still will not reverse. I'm telling you, she's a lizard. We should have stopped her. We should have stopped her. And it could have been like the end of Ace Ventura. Remember? And then you see the... Okay. Here's...
I'm sorry. No, I don't know what that was about. It was kind of a weird thing to say, but all right.
Bernie Sanders. And I haven't played a video. God knows how long it's been with Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's funny. The revolution just ate the guy. He's completely irrelevant. He's just this old babbling socialist buffoon. Nobody cares about him anymore. But here's
That's not entirely true. His chance to run for president has passed. He will never be president, sadly. I would love to see the dude as president. It's not going to happen. That doesn't mean he's irrelevant. He still has a lot of supporters. He still gets donations. He still influences the political landscape. He's still incredible in many ways. So, yeah, that's just not a fair characterization of the situation. But, okay.
Bernie. And suddenly he's very upset about what we did to kids. Now, this is a guy who, of course, loves the teachers union. We'll get to that in just a second. But he's very upset because they lock kids down. And, of course, he was for all the lockdowns. He loves government.
There were no federal lockdowns at any point during the pandemic in the United States. This is completely made up. The right loves to pretend that their rights were violated because they were forced to lock down against their will and all this other garbage. That never happened. Nobody was ever forced to stay indoors at any point. You were perfectly free to go out. But Dave and others are desperate to make themselves out to be victims, to make everybody out to be victims.
Nothing that Bernie's...
Oh, wait a minute. Somebody is telling me here, somebody is saying that was a transphobic dig about Ace Ventura. I don't even remember that movie. It's been many, many years since I've seen it. So, yeah, I guess apparently Dave was being transphobic with that one. I didn't hear that. That doesn't surprise me, though. Disappoints me. Disappoints the hell out of me, but does not surprise me at all.
Sanders loves more than government and taking money so government can do things, and he loves middle management and bureaucracy and all of that stuff. But now, 3 years later, he's upset because, a couple kids the kids are stupid now, basically.
And then I talked to kids about the isolation they experienced in COVID, the disruption for the first time. Modern history of this country. We all went to school. So in kindergarten, you go to school. These kids' lives have been disrupted. They didn't get the education that they needed.
Yeah, from my understanding, preventing kids from going to school for as long as they did actually did untold amounts of damage. It did so much damage that we won't know the extent of the damage that it did to kids' psyches until years down the line. Not just through isolation, but they basically lost 6 months of education by doing work from home stuff. Now, did it save a lot of people's lives? Oh, you bet it did. Was it worth it? I think that the right decision was made to pull kids out of school, at least temporarily. Did it go on a little bit too long? Maybe. I don't know. We can look at data to figure this out. But see, there's no nuance with people like Dave Rubin. He's counting this as a W, like he's been saying this all along. In reality, Dave Rubin has been screaming about masks and lockdowns that didn't happen and all this other stuff for ever. It's like with conspiracy theorists. Think about this, okay? They claim that there's that COVID leaked from a lab. No reason to claim that. Absolutely none. There's no evidence to back it up, but they claim it anyways. A year, 2, 3 years down the line, we investigate that and we find that maybe it did. Now, it didn't. That's been investigated. But hypothetically, let's say it was investigated and we came to the conclusion that, in fact, it did leak from a lab. That doesn't mean Dave Rubin was right to make that assumption in the first place. It doesn't mean conspiracy theorists were right along. They didn't have the evidence they needed to make that assumption that it leaked from a lab. Whether it turns out it did or not, that's not a W for conspiracy theorists. You need evidence before you believe anything. I don't care what it is or who believes what or any of that. I don't care. I care about requiring evidence for claims. And people like Dave Rubin don't seem to have any understanding of how basic claims like this should work, about burden of proof or evidentiary burden or any of that. They don't seem to have the most basic understanding of how the scientific method works. Now, in Dave Rubin's specific case, I think he does. I think he knows exactly how all of this works and why everything that he says is complete fucking nonsense. I think he knows, but he's propagandizing to people who don't and agreeing with them and validating their bad ideas.
They didn't see their friends. They didn't play ball. They didn't do theater. Okay? And on top of that, they're sitting worrying about whether the planet is going to be here for them when they are older because of climate change. So they got all of these things on their minds.
Kids are worried. They're worried because we locked them out of school. Like, sure, I did it too. Everybody did it. We all did it. And I did. They don't go to school and put on the mask and make sure you're vaccinated. And now they don't go to basketball. They're not going to theater.
Why is he making fun of him right now? I mean, everything that he said was 100% spot on.
Oh, I'm not sure. Am I doing Jackie Mason or Bernie Sanders? I'm not sure. A schmuck like me and I can't do it. Huh?
He's doing a racist, anti-Semitic, Jewish stereotype is what he's doing. Even though he is Jewish himself, that doesn't mean that he can't be anti-Semitic. You most definitely can be black and racist against the black community. You can be anti-Semitic and Jewish simultaneously. Just look at Ben Shapiro, for example. Like, there are a billion examples of this. But okay. Go on. Continue on with your racist stereotype here, Dave.
Bernie, well, Bernie, this one's for you. Here's a picture of you and Teachers Union President Randi Weingarten. You love her, you old socialist buffoon. Yes.
Bernie is not a socialist, actually. To my knowledge, it appears to me that Bernie Sanders is a social democrat, which is basically a capitalist who believes in heavily regulated capitalism with social programs added in, like Social Security, for example.
He was in on it with all of these people. What now? I'm Bernie Sanders and kids can't.
Saying in on it implies some kind of a nefarious malice or something. What was he supposedly in on?
Kids are also dying of heart attacks at an increasing rate. CBS covered that.
Heart attack deaths have become more common across all age groups since the start of the coronavirus pandemic.
But a recent study found that young people are actually most at risk in this case. According to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, the number of heart attack deaths among 25 to 44-year-olds in the U.S. over the first 2 years of the pandemic was 30% higher than predicted.
Oh, and you know what we didn't have in the first 2 years of the pandemic? A vaccine. Now, maybe we had one in the first 2 years, but not the first year. Heart attack deaths were up, not because of the vaccine, which is what he's about to blame it on, but because of the virus. COVID caused all kinds of insane, unknown effects. Deeply disturbing stuff. You know, myocarditis was reported with the vaccine. You know what else it was reported with? COVID. Would you rather die of COVID or risk a few mild side effects that people get over? The death rate from the virus is significantly worse than with the vaccine. There is no death rate with the vaccine, to my knowledge. They're just doing everything they can to demonize it and make people think that it's dangerous and everything else. Why? Because they're conspiracy theorists. Simple as that.
I don't know. Did we inject a whole bunch of young people with all sorts of weird stuff and we didn't?
In the first year? No. No, we didn't. And no, it wasn't weird stuff. It was a vaccine. A vaccine that is perfectly safe. It's been tested beyond a shadow of a doubt at this point, after all of these years. Like, we've been giving the vaccine to people for, 2 years now, right? I mean, we're in 2023, people. Oh, my God. The vaccine is already well tested. There is no doubt of its efficacy now. We know exactly how effective the vaccine is.
Didn't know what was going on? Did we strap weird shit on kids' faces?
No, the kids strapped masks on their faces, which lowered the death rate.
We scared the hell out of them about the environment. That was the other part of the Bernie. I'm not worried about the environment. Ugh. Remember my video on PragerU about the bravery deficit? I think it was my third.
No, I don't watch PragerU.
PragerU video. That's all we need, guys. Just get over the bravery deficit so that when a woman like Walensky says something, you just laugh in their face. And when a buffoon like Bernie says something, you laugh in their face. Or when Randy Weingarten or Joe Biden or any of these people, Gay Pete, any of them, when they say something, no, you are liars. You are all in on the lie, and I will not participate in the lie. I will no longer participate in the lie, right? That's
He lives in a fantasy land. This is so sad.
The great Alexander Solzhenitsyn quote. Like, all you have to do to stop this thing is stop participating in it. People participate in the lie because they're afraid if you don't participate in the lie, the thing will come get you. And that might be true to some degree. But do you think playing that never-ending game of shaving a little bit of truth off the top, do you think that'll save you? I don't think so. I don't think so. And when you do the right thing, you are rewarded for it. Ron DeSantis.
In Florida.
God, Ron DeSantis is just terrible in every way. He's banned books throughout the state to a disturbing degree. Like, the number of books he's banning is absolutely disturbing. He banned, to my knowledge, I think he banned Lord of the Rings, possibly Harry Potter. He banned 1984, the book 1984. He banned all kinds of stuff, dude. Those books are banned in a bunch of districts in Florida, and statewide there's a huge banning effort. It's just disturbing. Seriously, deeply disturbing.
We do education, not indoctrination, and so that runs afoul of our standards. And, many people agree with that in other states. We were just the only ones that had, the backbone to stand up and do it because they call you names and they demagogue you when you do it. But look, I'm so sick of people not doing what's right because they're worried that people are going to call them names. We're doing what's right.
So you want to ban books because you think it's right. Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to feel comfortable calling you a right-wing fascist. You're banning books. What else do you call it when books are banned? You're a right-wing fascist. What information are you afraid of? And didn't he identify as like a free speech absolutist, for that matter? What happened to free speech? It just goes right out the window when it's something he doesn't like. Let me let you in on a little secret about free speech, okay? We don't have free speech to protect people who want to talk about apple pie. Free speech laws and protections only exist to protect people who want to say things that you don't like. If you don't protect people who want to say things you don't like, you don't believe in free speech at all. It's not about saying things that you enjoy hearing. It's about saying things you don't enjoy hearing.
Do what's right. People will call you names, but then you get results, and you end up, in this case, living in a state that is free and flourishing and in line.
And no, it's not free by any stretch of the imagination. In no way is Florida free. They banned the book 1984, okay? How does it get less free than that? How does it get more obvious that what they're doing right now is fascism? How does it get more obvious than that? This is literally exactly what Hitler did in World War II. I hate to keep going to that example, but that's what's happening right now. Seriously.
With your values. That's how you do it. To end today's show, I want to circle right back to the beginning. We started by showing you a video from this one world government conference with evil Palpatine talking about being a master of the universe and all of the horrible things that he will do to you people. But then they oddly Skyped in Elon Musk, and Elon Musk wasn't having it.
One thing I should say, and I know this is called the World Government Summit, but I think we should be maybe a little bit concerned about actually becoming too much of a single world government.
Okay, that's not what the name meant. It was not implying that they want to be a world government. It was a collection of the governments of the world working to accomplish a goal or improve society or whatever other shit. Elon is very obviously just feeding into right-wing fear-mongering nonsense. How does it get more obvious in this, honestly?
If I may say, that we want to avoid creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments.
That does sound odd. Yeah, you know what? When something sounds odd like that, maybe you should rethink it. Just knock it around for a minute in your head. Repeat it to yourself a couple times in the mirror. See if it still sounds kind of odd. Because it sounds odd to literally everybody else listening. Too much cooperation in world governments is bad. Are you fucking kidding me? What the hell is he talking about right now?
Creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments. If you look at, say, at history and the rise and fall of civilizations, that really all throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, but it hasn't meant the doom of humanity as a whole, because there've been all these separate civilizations that were separated by great distances. So I think we want to be a little bit cautious.
Okay, so when governments fall, it doesn't mean that civilizations necessarily fall. So when, when Rome fell or whatever, the people in Rome didn't all die. The people in Rome were still in Rome. It just became something else. So I'm sorry, I simply just don't accept the premise that you're building out here. It's ridiculous.
Cautious about being too much of a single civilization, because if we are too much of a single civilization, then if the whole thing may collapse.
That just does not logically follow. That's complete nonsense. You know, everybody thought that Elon Musk was intelligent and really knew what he was talking about, because that's the image that he built for himself impressively. And the media contributed to it. They helped. They were like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was even in a Marvel movie, wasn't he? Oh, dude, this is actually a really hard trick. I know this trick. I think you're supposed to do like a... Dude, why is this in normal? This should not be in normal. I'm supposed to do a triple jump and then slide and do the triple jump there. Yeah, I can't do that. I mean, unless there's like a hidden block or something. Oh, there is a hidden... Never mind. Okay. Disregard. I was wrong. Okay, anyway. He was even in a Marvel movie as like some famous... wasn't he supposed to be like the Iron Man of the real world or some other thing? Turns out he's just a scumbag who lucked into his money and has a vested interest in censoring people he doesn't like. Dead serious. Elon Musk is terrible in every way. He's not extra intelligent. He's not special. He's not awesome or good or any of that garbage. He's a scumbag who loves censoring the people around him. That's it.
It would not be good if the whole thing collapsed. Now, there's an awful lot of reasons that some of the people in charge right now are worthy of a collapse, but I don't want to deal with the residual fallout of that collapse. And Elon is right. When they want one world government, well, if you have one structure above all of us, then some shit goes down over there and it's going to hurt you over here. So again, we should be reverting back to the way humans lived for literally thousands of years.
Oh, you know what? Dave is absolutely right. I think people loved it before we had any kind of civilizational structure. Hunting for berries every day and killing a cow, and if you can't manage to find a cow in the wild, then you fucking die of starvation. That was great. I loved that. Yeah, absolutely. And I bet all of the hunter-gatherers loved that too. 100%. That checks out. Yeah, we should be going back to a time before civilization existed. That sounds fantastic.
Where you were dependent on your family and your community and everything was local. And that's not to say technology is all evil, and it's not to say that there is no way for governments of other, well, certainly of states to work together on things, and then countries to work together on things, and all of that stuff.
This is complete garbage, dude.
But something is very wrong about this thing. So it's quite beautiful that that conference ended with Elon basically putting a poop emoji on the entire thing, because he happens to be the richest guy in the world who is fighting for free speech.
He's not the richest guy in the world anymore, is he? I think he lost like a massive amount of wealth, didn't he? And I forget who it is now who's the richest. Maybe Jeff Bezos?
And fighting for the ability for nations to exist for a purpose other than just giving power over to Klaus Schwab and those other people.
No one's giving power over to anybody. Nobody even suggested giving power to Klaus Schwab. Now, I don't know how many parts in I am at this point, but Klaus Schwab basically runs a World Economic Forum, which is a think tank that helps distribute vaccines or distribute money or whatever to where it's most needed. Comes up with plans and legislation and ideas to help the poorest countries and the poorest people in those countries out of poverty, basically. That's what the World Economic Forum does. That's it.
Folks, that's our show for today. I've got a
Post-game show coming up in a second on local.
No, I'm losing it now. Anyway, there's a post-game.
Oh, and, we don't know why we're doing a post-game show. It's just something.
Okay, well, it wasn't funny the first time, and I feel like he realized it wasn't funny, so he kind of gave up on it, and then he continued on anyways. Okay, you should have just stopped where you were, Dave. That was bad. It was real bad.
Like we do, we'll vaccinate people who come in. It's very exciting. Children are depressed. You can join us at RubinReport.locals.com. And if you don't, I'll see you tomorrow.
Goodbye.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
He has a stutter. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me to see Joe Biden struggling with a word like that. Absolutely. He's had a stutter since he was a little kid. Of course. And it's like really disgusting to see people make fun of him for that. But it's like they have no moral value at all. Like they're willing to make fun of anybody over anything. What is wrong with Dave Rubin that he would say and do the things that he says and does? It's simply disgusting. So anyway, that's the end of the Rubin Report episode, apparently. Just wrong, man. What is wrong with these people? Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I think it's just disgusting.